Okay, everyone, welcome to the Tuesday edition of Reality Check here on the home of Black Talk Media. It's none other than WURD. Welcome to the program. We are on 96.1 FM, 900 AM this Tuesday morning, and that is in Philly proper. But beyond Philly, throughout the nation, throughout the world, we are streaming at you live on wordradio.com, wordradio.com for our robust audio live stream. Also, we have WURD TV now at youtube.com/onWURD and facebook.com/4WURD as well. In addition to that, your WURD app, if you happen to have downloaded it at some point in the past or previously, you're probably listening to us on your smartphone or your tablet device as well. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm your host, executive producer, also creator of Reality Check, your daily dose of public affairs here on WURD. You can reach me on twitter.com. I'm on twitter.com at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check. That's where we roll on Twitter, twitter.com at Ellison Report, hashtag Reality Check. And the companion magazine to Reality Check here on WURD is the B Note, THEBE Note.com. That's the companion, the exclusive companion magazine to this program here, and you can check out the latest there. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in this Tuesday edition. Joining us now at the top of the 10 o'clock hour is Councilwoman Cindy Bass. Councilwoman Cindy Bass, representing parts of North Philly and actually representing my old neighborhood where I grew up. That is District 8. District 8, the Philadelphia City Council District. For more on her, you can go to phlcouncil.com/Cindy Bass. She's also on Twitter at Cindy Bass Philly on Twitter, on social media, if you'd like to reach her there. She joins us by phone. In case you have a question for her particularly about the topics that we're about to cover this morning, 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Councilwoman, how are you doing this morning? Good morning. Can you hear us, Councilwoman? Oh, she's not on yet. Okay. All right. I was sorry about that. Was under the impression that she was on. She's not on yet, so we'll just wait for her. But the phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open at the top of this 10 o'clock hour. We are expecting her on very shortly. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We're supposed to be talking with Councilwoman Cindy Bass at the top of this Tuesday edition of Reality Check. So she is expected to be on momentarily. In the meantime, feel free to call in at 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also want to get folks' thoughts on, particularly if they're in Philly or any other major cities that are listening in. And I covered this when I was just telling you about the B Note, and to check out the latest B Note and just a short analysis there. Once again, go to THEBE Note, THEBENOTE.com. And the title of the latest analysis there is Black Communities Must Both And on Police Violence and Community Violence. Black communities must both and on police violence and community violence. So the ability, when we say both and, the ability to walk and chew gum. We're going to have to walk and chew gum at the same time on both police violence and community violence. I'm not sure we've done that yet. We have not achieved that yet, and we have to. We're looking at homicides thus far in Philadelphia. 464 homicides thus far. We are 39% above where we were this same time last year. In 2019, at this same time, or as of December 7th last year, at least according to the Philadelphia Police Department, there were 333 homicides. So that was already high this time last year. When we were looking at last year, we were saying, oh my gosh, that is rather high. And now we are at 464. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And Philly's not the only one that's dealing with that. We are seeing spikes in violence in all the major cities or cities that are also comparable in size to Philadelphia. We're seeing that in Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, also spikes in violence in LA, New York, Washington, D.C. also seeing spikes there. So it's definitely something, and the pandemic has fueled quite a bit of it. We were seeing surges and signs before pandemic, but it's gotten much worse under pandemic, and so we'll talk more about that later on in the show. We do have Councilwoman Cindy Bass. She is joining us by phone. Once again, phlcouncil.com/Cindy Bass for more information on her. Councilwoman, good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
All right, good. How are you? Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate this. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation. My pleasure.
All right, excellent. So talk about your recently passed bill to ban toxic herbicides in public spaces in Philly. Why this particular policy? Why now? What was it about the timing of this? Did something happen?
Well, there's been a lot of conversation about this for a long time, and so I've been working with a young lady named Christopher, who is a part of a group called Toxic Free Philadelphia, and I actually met Chris when I worked for a member of Congress, Congressman Fatah, many moons ago, and we have been working on environmental issues then and continue to do so throughout the years. And so recently, she actually, in Toxic Free Philly, brought it to light about how much the city of Philadelphia was spraying, or how much they estimated the city was spraying. And it was a lot. And so I think that a lot of folks like myself, who use our playgrounds, our parks, our recreation centers, would be surprised to know that we spray at all. I think that there is the perception that, we just work hard and we do land management and, we don't have to spray toxic chemicals on the play services where we all go, where we take our children, where we take our dogs and walk through and, picnic and sit on the grass and, all those kinds of things. And so now recognizing that this is, it can be much more dangerous, particularly in the African-American community, I believe, because it seems that we have a higher propensity for cancers, for heart disease, for all kinds of things that can be related to those toxic chemicals. So they brought it to our attention, and we wanted to work with them to get something done, and that's how this bill all came together. And so let me actually first start out by thanking Toxic Free Philly and Christopher for their advocacy and their work on this issue for years, and many other issues here in the city of Philadelphia.
Do we have any sort of any studies that have been done, any data that Toxic Free Philly was presenting to you, or any other advocates were presenting to you, making sort of direct linkages between those chronic disease rates, those cancer, respiratory illness, other types of chronic disease rates, and the application of these toxic herbicides? So have we been able to see the correlation there in terms of the public health impact?
The amount of data is completely overwhelming and draws, in my opinion, a direct link between the use of these types of chemicals and the increase in cancer rates and exposure and just other chronic diseases that affect our community at higher rates. There can be no doubt that these chemicals are not good. There can be no doubt that these chemicals have an absolutely adverse effect on our community. And so there was case after case after case. We had a hearing, I want to say it was back in October, and we, presented evidence, or, the various groups presented evidence. And we also heard from a number of different locales across the nation, different municipalities that do organic land management, and say, listen, we stopped doing this 20 years ago. We stopped using these chemicals 15, 20 years ago. You don't have to. Let us show you. Let us help you. And unfortunately, the Department of Parks and Recreation, they were hesitant. And one of the things that is a problem in this city is that we have a habit of doing what we do because that's the way we've always done it. And that doesn't mean that it's right. But we do it because that's the way it's always been done, and so that's the way it's supposed to be done, and we can't do anything else. There's always a reason why. There's always, a financial concern to look at. But my question is, what is the financial impact of cancer? What is the family impact of someone developing a chronic respiratory disease from inhaling these chemicals? And so not only does this bill prohibit the spraying, But when we do spray, because there is a limited window in which there might be, the reason to use a similar chemical, not the exact same chemical, but it has to go through a whole board. It has to go through an entire process before any chemical other than organic chemicals can be used. And so, and in that instance, when anything has been sprayed, organic or otherwise, there will now be postings on the outside of a field or the outside of a playground, recreation center, wherever it's used, that says, alert, we have sprayed this area. We want you to know that this area is sprayed. So, and I ask you and all of our listeners, wouldn't you want to know before you walk through a park, in the summer with your feet exposed, with sandals on or flip-flops or whatever, before you take your dog into the park, wouldn't you want to know that they just sprayed? I think that most people would say yes. I think all people would say yes.
So when you say a park or a green space just sprayed a city-owned property, so I guess after a while the herbicide, it dissipates after, do we still get the sense that the city is going to use these types of chemicals, use them less, or we're going with this ban now, they're just going to replace the herbicides with something much more organic? Do you have any indication that the city has a plan for using something that's a bit more organic and a bit more gentle on those green spaces that's less dangerous as far as the public health impact?
Well, the law requires the city to come up with a plan now. And so it wouldn't have happened without this bill. So there was no intention, there was no forethought. And again, it was very disappointing because we did ask the department to, listen, tell us what you can live with. Tell us how long will it take you to get there. Tell us, what do you think you can do? Give us some feedback. When we originally proposed the bill, we went to them and we said, listen, we want to work with you. We don't want to make your life hard. We want to all work together and try to figure out how can we best serve the citizens of the city of Philadelphia. And so we gave them the bill. We offered them the opportunity to write some amendments, which are some changes to the bill, and they came back with absolutely nothing. And so, we proceeded and were able to get it through. But, it just speaks to, like I said earlier, sort of the thought process, the mindset of this is what we do. This is the way we've always done it. We're not going to change that. And some things have to change. We are giving the city, I believe it's 18 months to come up with a plan. You know that the city moves very slowly in a lot of these regards. And so we're giving them 18 months to come up with your plan. Talk to some of these other municipalities that have done this and find out what have they done, how have they done it, how can we do it?
Right.
And I think that this is something that can definitely happen. And a lot of these municipalities they do a lot of land management. I want to say there are places that do an incredible amount of land management, organic land management, throughout this country. Cities, small towns, rural areas, everyone's doing it. This is what we should be doing, and I'm glad to see that we are on the right track right now.
Councilwoman, just to clarify here too, this is just for city-owned or city-managed property. We don't have any sort of ban for residential and commercial property. So, what about that? What about residential and commercial property using these types of toxic herbicides?
That is correct. So, our authority is over the city's use of these products, and so we would hope and encourage folks to really pay attention to products, a certain particular product, glyphosate, which is known as one of the main chemicals that's a carcinogen. We want folks to know about this, to be aware about it, and we hope that with the postings, people will pay attention. Well, what am I spraying? What am I spraying around my property? What am I putting out? Because it's just so very important. The other thing I just wanted to mention in general is when we talk about the environment, we have to talk about, African-American communities and the way environment is addressed in our neighborhood. Because when you talk about the environment, when you talk to certain communities, there's an expectation, about what chemicals are used or not used. There's an expectation about, the cleanliness of the environment. A lot of times when I feel like I'm talking about the environment, I'm talking about trash, dumping, debris. We get a lot of construction debris. We don't know what's in it. I'm assuming lead. I'm assuming asbestos. Who knows what else? But for some communities, that's not even a part of the conversation. Again, there's an expectation. So, we want the quality of life. That's what our office does. We do quality of life stuff. We do quality of life issues. And so if someone's dumping in your neighborhood, we want to know about it. We want to be out there and get it cleaned up. We want to put up cameras. One of the things that we've done is put up cameras. If you live in an area that's particularly high crime or high dumping, we'll put up cameras on your property for you that you can monitor so you can see what's going on. And so these are some of the things that we've done to address the environment and other issues, quality of life issues in our community.
Yeah, I wish we could apply that sort of strategy citywide, because that's a conversation too. I want to have an extended conversation, not just in this segment, but other segments about kind of, this feels like low-hanging fruit to me. Like, for example, the trash issue in terms of violence mitigation or tree planting or things like what you were saying, toxic herbicides. I mean, there's got to be linkages there between high use of toxic herbicides and distressed Black communities like what you represent and rise in violence rates. We've seen that, like in Flint, Michigan, everyone was talking about that, and the lead. People, they're worried about how that could lead to future violent crime rates because of the neurological impact of the lead. I do have a question here, because you've pivoted to environmental issues in recent years. You not just focus on this issue, but other issues. And so just your sense of the overall progress on that and how the city is acting on these issues, because I am confounded as to why the city on one hand lays out a lot of big promises through big green talk, but then your body, the council, approves things like natural gas sites. And I mean, you're dealing with one in your own district in Nicetown. There's another one in Southwest Philly. So it's like, okay, we want to go all green and clean energy. The mayor says that, the council says that by a certain time, but then you approve natural gas sites. The contradiction there is a bit baffling. And how do we reconcile that?
Well, I think there's a lot that we can do. And I think one of the things is more information, more communication with the community. I think with the gas site in South Philadelphia, there were a number of different factors that added to the passage of that legislation. In terms of Philadelphia being one of the largest, the largest city that has the highest rate of poverty. And so people will say, well, how does that connect to the environment? So we want to go green. Well, I'll just say this. I want to go green as quickly as possible. I live on this planet, and, we all are here. This is about, for all of us, this is about civilization. The planet itself will be here. The question is, will we be here? And so this is something that's very, very important. And at the same time, trying to balance the average everyday needs of those who are living in poverty, who can't pay a gas bill. So we have to move away from fossil fuel. We have to move away from, these energy plants. We have to get to a different way. But one of the problems that I have is that the city really has not, and when I say the city, I say the administration, is that in the last two administrations, which would be the Nutter administration and the Kennedy administration, we've made all of these grand pronouncements about all of the things that we want to do around the environment, but we really haven't done it. And particularly around, the current administration, one of the things that our current mayor has said over and over again in the budget hearings and when he gives his big budget speech every year is he talks about seeing and viewing everything through a racial equity lens. And when you look at some of the policies, some of the things that have happened, some of the things that have been done, whether it's on the environment or I could stretch it across the board. When you look at these things through a racial equity lens, our communities have fared far worse than they have in the past under other administrations.
But
so
what about
that requires?
What about though, Councilwoman? Because what's the update? Because we mentioned the natural gas plant in South Philly. What's the update on that SEPTA natural gas plant? Isn't that in your district? The Midvale bus depot, and they seem to be still moving forward with that. But in Nicetown, 75% more fine particulate particle pollution, 95% more diesel exhaust, and that's compared to any other community in the country. So I'm wondering,
Right.
what have you? And I know you've been vocal on that in the past. I mean, are you still vocal on that against that natural gas plant? I mean, I understand SEPTA is under a lot of pressure, but I wonder about that.
SEPTA is under a lot of pressure. We've gone to court. We've talked to, all of the folks, all of the parties to be. We've tried to block it in any way, shape, or form. One of the problems that we had is that there was a lot of misinformation out there. There was misinformation that was provided by some folks who I think probably meant well, but said that Cindy Bass can block it through zoning. Untrue, absolutely untrue. And so this was a by right project on their property. There actually was another gas generator already on the site. And so the idea was that this was going to be an improvement. Now, I don't know how much of an improvement it's going to be, because the last one, in my opinion, was absolutely disastrous. It did not, it was not good for the community. And I think when you look at the high asthma rates that exist in that neighborhood, that's exactly one of the factors, one of the contributing factors that led us there. But clearly there's a lot more work to be done. The SEPTA gas plant or gas generator project has proceeded. I believe at this point it's actually completed. And again, this was a by right project that was able to be built on their site, which means that, we advocated, we talked to SEPTA, we wrote letters, we wrote to the SEPTA board, we wrote to the governor, we reached out to anyone and everyone who was willing to listen and participate and who had some connection with SEPTA to get them to be influenced by what was being said by the community. But unfortunately, that was something that, they moved forward with without us, and it's most unfortunate.
That is unfortunate. We've been talking with, we'll keep an eye on it, and I appreciate your time too, Councilwoman. I do. Councilwoman Cindy Bass, representing District 8 in Philadelphia, Council District 8 in Philadelphia. Go to phlcouncil.com/Cindy Bass. I hope we can invite you to, at some point, submit an op-ed or some commentary to our EcoWord environmental justice journalism project, Councilwoman. And hopefully this won't be the last of conversations on your focus on the environment. So really appreciate your time this morning. At Cindy Bass Philly on social media. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
All right. Take care. Be safe out there. Thank you. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with Darielle Rodriguez, talking about labor rights in this pandemic environment. And we did have some recent jobs numbers, some recent national jobs numbers that came out this past Friday. So taking a look at that, with the workers and labor environment looks like, labor protections, that hasn't been going too well, in addition to the employment situation during pandemic, particularly in places like Philadelphia. So let me take a break. When we come back, we'll have Darielle Rodriguez at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, overseeing its employment task force. And we'll be right back here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
With Internet Essentials from Comcast for only $9.95 a month, you get more. High-speed home internet service included. Peace of mind with XFi Advanced Security included. Access to millions of XFi Wi-Fi hotspots. That's included too. Internet Essentials from Comcast brings you affordable, high-speed internet to your home for only $9.95 a month. When you're connected, you're ready for anything. Visit InternetEssentials.com for more information. Taxes extra. Restrictions apply.
Have you heard about City Council's plan to build more affordable housing, repair existing homes, create jobs, and support small business? The Neighborhood Preservation Initiative will invest $400 million in Philly communities. Read about it at www.phlcouncil.com/NPI.
As a business owner, hiring and developing people from the community that your company serves is one of the best ways to show commitment to that community. Let WURD Radio help with Livelihood, our new initiative that connects Philadelphians with companies like yours. We'll feature your business, open employment opportunities, and resources to connect your company with talent and ensure that you reach your target demographic. To learn more about how Livelihood can help you build your team, visit wordworks.com. That's WURD works.com. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network. Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, we're back at it here on Reality Check, your daily dose of public affairs. We're here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, Delaware Valley. But beyond that, throughout the nation, throughout the world, we are on our live stream at WURD Radio, WURDradio.com, and on WURD TV, YouTube.com/onWURD and Facebook.com/4WURD as well. Feel free to leave comments in the comments section or remarks in the comments sections, questions as well at the Facebook Live page. We appreciate that. You're also listening to us by WURD app, and we do appreciate it. We're at Ellison Report, by the way, #Reality Check on social media if you want to leave comments or participate in the discussion that way over the next few hours. Joining us now here on WURD TV and by Skype is Darielle Rodriguez. She oversees the Employment Task Force at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. You can go to civilrights.org for more information on the Leadership Conference, and you can see her on WURD TV here on Reality Check. Darielle, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, excellent.
To be here.
All right, thank you. No, we appreciate your time. The Employment Task Force, explain what that is.
Sure. So I am with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. I am the director of the Economic Justice Project. I've been there for the past 4 years. And one responsibility that I have is I co-chair the Employment Task Force that is run by the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. The Leadership Conference is the umbrella civil rights organization, and the Lawyers Committee is one part of that umbrella of civil rights organizations.
Got it. Yeah, that's right. Because you have all those different organizations. You all partner up on a number of issues, including employment.
That's right.
Under that leadership conference. Lawyers Committee for Civil. Now, I'm very familiar with Lawyers Committee. Go to lawyerscommittee.org for more on Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Thank you for that correction too.
No problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, there's just so much that's happening in the labor and employment rights space, particularly as we're going through pandemic. But first, I want to get your sense or your impressions, because we had jobs numbers that were released. We went through that monthly jobs or unemployment report exercise this past Friday. And so what are you seeing in those recent unemployment numbers, those recent jobs numbers, Darielle, that's bothering you the most right now, that's probably keeping you up at night a little bit?
So I think the biggest issue is that we continue to see incredibly high, historically high unemployment rates for Black Americans and other people of color. And there's a concern that even before the pandemic, Black Americans were employed at much lower rates than whites and other groups. And the pandemic has only exacerbated that. What we're seeing during the pandemic is a confluence of multiple crises, including not only the health crisis, which is obviously disproportionately impacting Black communities, but also an economic crisis. The recession is hitting Black communities especially hard. And there's a real concern that as we go into the next year, what are we going to do to ensure that Black communities can get back on their feet and have access to safe jobs that provide living wages?
Yeah. You know what also somewhat bugs me about this conversation about Black unemployment numbers, and it may irritate you when others in your space a little bit too, is we keep looking for, or not us, but certain interests will keep, like the administration, the current administration will keep looking for signs that, oh, the Black unemployment rate has gone down. But still, just like you said, in comparison to whites and other demographic groups, it's still very high. And that's just sort of an official snapshot. It's not like that's the full, complete picture of how bad or how permanent, because we don't really have a good official sense of how permanent those Black unemployment numbers or other unemployment numbers are. I wonder about that, because it seems to be presented as a measure of progress. Oh, because there's a little bit of a downtick in Black unemployment. Oh, Black unemployment must be, we must have solved it. We must have, cracked that code somewhat.
Yeah, I agree that that is inaccurate. And there has been research that shows that Black Americans are in the jobs that they are least likely to get back, right? So not only are they losing jobs, but those job losses will oftentimes be permanent. And what we're also seeing is, and something that we have to continue keeping our eye on, is the uptick in automation. And that uptick has been exacerbated by the pandemic. And so that's why the Lawyers Committee joined the coalition led by the Leadership Conference in calling on the Biden administration to nominate a real champion of workers' rights and civil rights to lead the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor is a critical federal agency charged with protecting the rights of workers. And we know that under this administration has just abdicated its responsibilities to protect workers, and especially during the pandemic. One thing that this administration has failed to do is to implement an emergency temporary standard, a safety standard for all employers across the country. So what you have is employers basically being left to their own devices to govern themselves in the wake of a pandemic. And as we know, Black workers are in the frontline essential positions. We are keeping this economy running. And unfortunately, those frontline workers are at increased risk of exposure to COVID. So there is a dire need for the next administration, day one, to implement a safety standard that will apply to all employers across the country.
When you say safety standard, what's that look like? What's the framework for that?
Sure. So it'll look like mandatory social distancing, requiring all employers to have all employees wearing PPE, whether it's a face mask or whatever other PPE is appropriate, personal protective equipment, whatever is relevant or appropriate for the job that is being done. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, after the pandemic hit, we've had to pivot our work to really address the needs in communities of color, and in particular in Black communities. And one thing that we saw is that oftentimes in frontline jobs, for example, in meatpacking plants, because of the lack of PPE, because of the lack of social distancing, because of the congregate nature of the workplace, those places are real hotspots for COVID, not only within the workplace, but in their surrounding communities. And so, again, that is the result of this administration not implementing an emergency safety standard, and that really has to be a priority day one for the next administration.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with another lawyer from another advocacy group, and trying to recall who that was now. It'll probably come to me in a few minutes, so I'm showing a little bit of my age. But she was talking about how even in hospitals and medical institutions, there's a lack of regulations or a lack of standards to even guard against infectious diseases. You just don't like there are no kind of standard. What are those OSHA standards? Correct? Is that what that is? You know, the occupational
Right.
safety hazard standards. So even in the hospitals, they don't have like a basic like federal like a universal federal standard on, hey, these are the types of infectious or airborne diseases we need to, these are the regulations governing how we protect ourselves against that. And I don't think a lot of people realize how severe that is. So you've been busy, a lawyer like yourself who focuses on labor rights, employment law, organizations like Lawyers Committee and others have been rather busy. I mean, we've been seeing an uptick in the number of reports of people citing abuses by their employers during a time like this. You know, for example, people putting, and talk about that if you can a little bit, people being put between a very unfair rock and a hard place, like having to decide between, do I go to work or do I stay home? Because I've got a child or two who has to stay at home too, because they have to remote learn, but they're not old enough to stay at home by themselves. I've got to make this choice. How like severe is that? How like prominent a feature is that right now in this pandemic economy?
Yeah, that it's incredibly prominent. It's a huge issue. Black workers are less likely to be able to work from home and really oftentimes have to go into the workplace to do their jobs. And so a lot of workers are put between a rock and a hard place, as you said, between having to pick between protecting themselves and their families and going into work and making a living and supporting their families. And that is a choice that no worker should have to make. Every worker deserves to be in a workplace that is safe and that is free of harassment and discrimination. There is an organization called the National Employment Lawyers Project, and a few months ago, they put out a study showing that Black workers are actually more likely to experience retaliation for making complaints related to the lack of COVID safety in their workplaces. And so we're in the situation where Black workers are having to make this choice of going into work to continue making a living, and then also experiencing higher rates of retaliation if they actually complain about the lack of safety standards in their workplace.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. You know, the other, you know, so I see the conversation happening amongst the policymakers on the state, local, federal level. I see the conversation, like the conversation you and I are having, from the advocates in this space, right? You know, from organizations like yours. I see the conversation that we're having as like workers, as like everyday people, residents, citizens, you know, dealing with this head on and trying to make these choices, trying to find that right balance in a really tricky and very difficult time. What about the businesses? Like, right, what about the chambers of commerce? What about the, you know, and not just big national corporate conglomerates? Most employers are small businesses, small to mid-sized businesses. I don't hear them as a stakeholder in this conversation, and they're in the pandemic too. It's as if they're, you know, when it comes to the conversation on school closures, for example, I want to hear what are the employers, are you guys going to be stakeholders in this conversation? Are you going to kind of help parents strike a balance between, or maybe save parents from making those hard choices between work and having to stay home with their kids doing remote learning, for example? So I'm just sort of confounded by that. You know, I wonder if that conversation is going on or if it will ever happen. I do see businesses putting pressure on people like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to press for business liability protections and pandemic relief. That I do see, but I'm not seeing that other conversation there as far as protection, as far as those basics.
Yeah, and I think that that's the role of the federal government. The federal government has to hold employers accountable, not only on workplace safety issues, but also on employment discrimination issues, workplace equity, diversity, inclusion issues. And it's part of the reason why the Lawyers Committee, in the letter that we sent to the Biden administration, along with the Leadership Conference, we asked for someone who is committed to enforcing anti-discrimination laws. We know that with the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, that there has been a real uptick and focus on workplace equity in corporations and boardrooms across the country. And a lot of advocates are holding businesses accountable, really pushing them for their diversity numbers, really pushing them to speak out on the diversity, equity, and inclusion practices that they have in place. Mm-hmm. And of course, some businesses are trying to do the right thing, but as we have seen, a lot of businesses have publicized their numbers and they're not looking so great. So their heart may be in the right place, but you really do need a strong federal enforcement Department of Labor to ensure that workplaces and employers are doing the right thing.
The other thing too, I've been wondering about this recently, Darielle, is unemployment during recession. Why is that a normal thing, right? Because I've seen other places. I've seen places in Europe, for example, where they've tried to guard against that. They've made attempts like Germany, France, even England, where it's like, you don't have to lose your job just because you're in a recession that's of no fault of your own. We're in a pandemic, or we're now in a recession that has been triggered by a pandemic. No one created this except for the current administration, but that's another conversation. But I wonder about how we normalize unemployment has to be a thing during recession. It doesn't have to be that way, right?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I mean, the COVID stimulus package that's just been sitting at the Senate and Congress. Months ago, the House passed another COVID stimulus package, and we know that the communities that we serve really need the stimulus money in a new package. A lot of the provisions within the current package expire at the end of the year, including, as you mentioned, the paid leave protections that workers have been using, workers who have family caregiving responsibilities and need to take off from work, but can't afford to do that without receiving some supplemental pay. So it's really, really critical that a COVID stimulus package be passed as soon as possible. And unfortunately, there has just been stalemate in Congress, and there's been a little bit of activity more recently, but I agree that these are things that are preventable, and we need to prioritize the economic health and well-being of our country. Too many people have lost their lives to this pandemic. Those lives are disproportionately Black and brown. And it's really time that we take care of the communities that are hurting the most. And, everyone's lives are intertwined. So I think how we treat the communities who are most impacted will really say a lot about who we are as a country.
Yeah, we've been talking with Darielle Rodriguez. She is with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law, works with the Employment Task Force at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. For the Lawyers Committee, go to lawyerscommittee.org for more on what they do, what she's up to, Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and to learn more about their Employment Task Force, you can go to civilrights.org for that. Darielle, thanks so much for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Charles. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye. You too. All right. We are going to take a quick break, but also don't forget, if you want to buy Black for the holidays, we've got you covered. WURD Radio is proud to present our virtual holiday marketplace online. Support local, small, Black-owned businesses through the marketplace and purchase your holiday gifts today. So go to wurdradio.com/marketplace or wordworks.com/marketplace. That's real easy. So, and we just talked about just the really tough time that workers have been having in this tough pandemic environment. Black businesses obviously have been having they are the businesses most likely to have a hard time and also to dissolve, to disappear during this pandemic. So let's do what we can to support their efforts, to support their good work. Wordradio.com/marketplace for more and to learn how to buy Black during the holidays. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break. Phone lines are open. We'll be right back.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor. for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
In Pennsylvania, it's now illegal to sell tobacco products, including cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, vapes, or electronic cigarettes to anyone under 21. Stores can get fined up to $1,000 for selling tobacco to someone who is underage. Know the law. Check IDs. Post your retailer license. Make sure only employees have access to tobacco products and only sell tobacco products to customers aged 21 and older. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach with tips to help you stay well. We breathe every day and have been doing so since before we were born. But wait, let's think about this for a moment. Something as simple as breathing can enhance our health and well-being. When we breathe mindfully, we slow down, take deep breaths, and activate our parasympathetic system to relax our bodies. Mindful breathing goes like this. Number 1, find a comfortable place to sit still for a few minutes. Number 2, close your eyes and relax your hands on your thighs. Number 3, take a deep breath in and count to 3. Then exhale your breath and count to 3. Do this 5 times. We sometimes think mindful breathing has to be an intense experience, yet even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com.
Reality check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, some news coming out of Washington. I'm not sure if folks heard last night. I know I was checking this out, was hearing this. We now have a bit of history made as far as the Biden cabinet is concerned. The first black defense secretary. So there will be a black man who will be heading up the world's largest military. So former retired General Lloyd Austin has been nominated to head the Defense Department, or the Department of Defense. That is a pretty big deal to have in terms of just representation and having that kind of experience, that kind of background and expertise now heading up the world's most powerful and largest military. So it'd be interesting to see what the conversation will be like once he heads on to Senate confirmation hearings. But Lloyd Austin will be the first black SecDef, that's the nickname for Secretary of Defense. He will be the first black defense secretary, so that's quite a milestone. And so we'll continue that conversation. Also, Congressman James Clyburn, House Majority Whip James Clyburn, predicting that President-elect Biden will nominate Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, a congresswoman out of Ohio representing parts of Cleveland, to a cabinet position. Congressman Clyburn, or House Majority Whip Clyburn, had been pushing for Marcia Fudge to be Secretary of Agriculture, but we're getting word that Joe Biden is probably going to pick former Department of Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack for that position. So some people not too thrilled about that because particularly Tom Vilsack's handling of the Shirley Sherrod controversy back in 2010. Shirley Sherrod, who was a manager, headed up one of the departments, also used to work very, very closely, was leading up efforts by the Department of Agriculture with respect to black farmers. Shirley Sherrod, if you remember back in 2010, was fired by Tom Vilsack because of some comments that she made that were totally taken out of context. In fact, Vilsack had to was forced to apologize publicly to Shirley Sherrod. Also, President Obama was forced to apologize to Shirley Sherrod as well, and he made her a job offer, was trying to give her a job back, and she didn't want to take it. She went off and did other things, but that she had been at the Ag Department for quite a long time, but people felt like Tom Vilsack really mistreated Shirley Sherrod, after her comments were completely distorted and taken out of context back in 2010, if you remember that controversy. I know it was about 10 years ago. It's quite a while ago, but people are not so thrilled about that. So there was a hope that, especially between the Shirley Sherrod controversy that happened 10 years ago and the situation with the really bad situation in terms of how black farmers are treated by the Department of Agriculture. Black farmers have been slowly eradicated by Department of Agriculture policies, and people felt like some of those policies have accelerated that deterioration has accelerated in recent years, and also high rates of food insecurity in the black community as well. How to tackle that? People feel that it's time for a black agriculture secretary. That's probably not going to happen. Joe Biden is going to lean on Tom Vilsack, because Tom Vilsack, he kept the trains running on time at Department of Agriculture during the Obama administration. So we'll keep an eye on that, but not sure where Congresswoman Marsha Fudge may end up. But, House Majority Whip James Clyburn keeps pushing for people like Marsha Fudge and other Congressional Black Caucus members. That's fine. Just make sure y'all can replace those Congressional Black Caucus members with either other black members or other Democrats, because, Democrats keep pushing for House members to serve on the Biden cabinet, but they can barely maintain their House, their majority in the House. They've already lost a bunch of seats, a whole cluster of seats in the House. You got a very narrow majority. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Majority Whip James Clyburn are going to need as much cushion as they can possibly get when they start voting on some key pieces of legislation, especially when the Biden administration starts up in late January. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We have a comment here from a listener. I think this is Lola at LolaCon9. It was really horrible at first to see how they. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not her first. Oh, this was Lola responding to the conversation we just had with Darielle Rodriguez at the Lawyers Committee. At LolaCon9 says, paid less as well. Pre-COVID, some black people were already on the poverty line, barely making it. Children would get their meals and interactions at schools. What are they doing now? You don't hear anything. It's like 2008, 2009 all over again, but doubly worse and doubly dire. So, and Lola follows up with some more comment on that. It was really horrible at first to see how they were treated. No barriers at stores, gloves, masks, scrambling for these protections while they had to continue to work. Stores packed to the hilt. It's gotten better, but people are still too close in stores. Masks below noses. Yeah, we do still see a lot of that. So people just still not getting it, still not doing this correctly. Let me go to Woody out of Winfield, who's calling in for a reality check. Woody?
Hey, Charles, how you doing?
How you doing, sir? All right.
Listen, your grandmother's been patting me on the back. She wouldn't let me hang up because you did say that you were going to get some questions from Miss Cindy Bass. I really appreciate her. She's very active. I just wanted to fill in some spaces. I didn't know that you weren't going to take a call, so I hung on.
Oh no, I actually, yeah, I did have I announced that at the beginning. So just and just Woody, just to clear that up, yeah, because I did announce the number. I said so just so everyone knows, and you too, Woody. Whenever there is an elected official on reality check,
right,
state, local, or federal, and they are from the Philly area, and they know this by now too, phone lines are always open. So because that is the rule. They know that. They have to. There are no closed phone lines for Philadelphia elected officials, Philadelphia area elected officials, state, local, and federal. So they know that. I have no control over other elected officials from other places.
Gotcha.
Because they don't feel like they're already feeling like they're going the distance, going on a Philadelphia radio station. But I've said that many times before. So I just wanted to make sure, just so always call in.
Okay.
Don't hesitate. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead, Woody. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying with Miss Bass again. She's a pretty active person. But when we're talking about environmental problems, I think about quality of life. And if someone has graduated these high schools without being able to read. And I keep telling you what Donald Trump had stated. African Americans, your schools are all messed up, can't get money from banks, gentrified out your neighborhoods. These are all key factors that he just put out there, not to do anything about it, but he put it out there so that the other politicians would be threatened, because seemingly everybody knows about it, but nobody wants to talk about it. That's the key to an environment that would help with jobs, just like the young lady that just got off. I believe her name was Rodriguez. She just got off, and she was talking about the jobs and the job issue. Well, from the gentrification issue, you can't get a job if you can't fill out an application. That's the first thing. When you talk about environmental issues as it related to Cindy talking about the spraying of the neighborhoods, well, gentrification, again, you got a lot of whites out there jogging and all these other different cultures that have a lot of money that are moving into your neighborhoods because no poor people are moving into those neighborhoods, but they're moving out those people that were poor. That's the whole issue. So they're going to make sure that they're not going to jog around places where you have these sprays that are going to affect their health. Well, who thinks about the health of the inner city people, starting with education? If you can't read, you can't read to know what's not the problem, how to get rid of the problem. You can't ask the proper questions to counsel. So I'll leave this with you, and then I'll let you go. In memory of everyday people, I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but in memory of everyday people, which was like Joey Temple, he was an everyday guy, and he stood up for everyday people. I would love to see the station be able, on council, because you cover that on every week, have at least one or two people that could ask the question from the radio station, or either your callers to be able to ask the question. Everyday People's Act, in memory of Joey Temple. I think that would really be something great, but I just put it out there so you can think about it.
No, that is food for thought. Thank you for that. Yeah. Everyday People's Act. I like that. I'm sure Joy would have liked that too. So let's explore that. Thank you, Woody. I'm going to take a break as we head into the 11 o'clock hour. Also, phone lines remain open. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Mike Green is going to join us next in the 11 o'clock hour, but phone lines are open in case you want to join in on that discussion of some people out there that enjoy talking with Mike Green. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. And let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check.
Have you heard about City Council's plan to build more affordable housing, repair existing homes, create jobs, and support small business? The Neighborhood Preservation Initiative will invest $400 million in Philly communities. Read about it at www.phlcouncil.com/NPI.
PECO is here to help this winter. With LIHEAP, you can get up to a $1,000 cash grant towards your PECO bill. You don't have to be behind on your bill to qualify, and you'll never have to pay it back. Even a family of 4 with an annual income of $40,000 is eligible. So don't count yourself out. This deal is first come, first served, so apply now at PECO.com/LIHEAP or call 800-34-HELP4. That's 800-34-HELP4.
Always Best Care is a great place to work.
Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
The WURD Radio Newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio Newsletter. Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com, listen beyond Philly proper, and WURD TV. You can watch us on WURD TV as well. In fact, as you're watching us, you can watch me with Mike Green, cultural economist. Go to @AMikeGreen2 on social media if you'd like to engage him more there. He joins us regularly. He's a regular contributor here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open, too, if you'd like to join in on this conversation. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Mike Green, what's good? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Charles. How are you?
All right, good, good. And early good morning, so because it's you're on Pacific time, you're on West Coast time. It's about 3 hours behind us. So you get up a little earlier to join us on Reality Check. We always appreciate that too. Appreciate your time. I'm wondering. I just saw this last night. Lloyd Austin, retired general, will be the first Black defense secretary. He will be the first Black person, first Black man to head up. So we assume the world's largest military, right? The most powerful military on the planet. Before then, there was this big fight. There still is a big fight over the number of Black faces at the Biden table in the Biden cabinet. Well, I think Biden, in response to that, I mean, once that conversation one day reached a fevered pitch, then he said, okay, I'm going to make this the chair of my White House Council on Economic Advisors. I'm going to elevate her to a cabinet position. So now we got the top economist in the country will be a Black woman. What's your thought on this? That this fight over Black faces, but I don't know what the agenda is. I'm not hearing from like Black political leadership like, hey, this is our list of demands. We talked to Mike Green, and Mike Green told us these are the demands. This is what we want as the agenda. Everybody's talking about Black faces. I don't know what the Black agenda is, though.
Well, as usual, you want to get to the nitty gritty. I understand, Charles.
Right.
But I'm gonna cut him some slack on this. And here's the reason why. First of all, I spent 12 years in the military, so I have a healthy respect for what it took for a Black man to get to the top of the ladder and become the lead guy in charge of the white man's military. I have healthy respect for that. Okay.
That's a big lift. Yeah.
That's one. If they let him, they're gonna find all kinds of reasons.
That's a tough brother right there. That's a tough brother. Yeah. That's.
I
can use some other language from where I grew up on the block to describe that. Giving him much, but I'm not going to use that kind of language because we on family radio. But yeah, that's a tough brother right there.
Let me tell you, I know what he had to go through. So
right.
I have a healthy respect for that man.
Yes, sir.
And I know he will be awesome. At the end of the day, here's what I know about this. We're transitioning from a corrupt authoritarian regime, a criminal organization, if you will, to competent leadership. Now, these Black and brown faces are symbolic, of course, but they're symbolic of conscientious representation and still no guarantee of systemic change. Mm-hmm. But they are there to give us a sense of symbolism. Now, that being said, the best that we can hope for is some measure of racial equity that's going to be deployed through these federal agencies that they're being put in charge of for procurement and contracting purposes. That's the best we can hope for. Okay, so if we're looking for broad-scale systemic change across society, this is not where we should be looking. Wow. But if we're looking for competent leadership, I have a sense that Obama's wingman, Biden, he's got a bench behind him that's watching him very carefully. And they're putting in competent leadership for him in the pool of opportunities for him to choose from. So I have a sense that we're going to have competent leadership across the board. And the best we can hope for is that the federal agencies will no longer be undermined, but they will then be given the support that they need to do their task. But at the same time, there will be some infusion of racial equity policies within all those agencies. That's the best I can hope for.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of conversation about the White House creating an Office of Racial Equity. I think I had that conversation about a week or two ago with someone at Center for American Progress. So there's some pressure for the White House to create that, and that it would be like this racial equity framework or operational framework that would be applied to or imposed on all the different agencies. But, my only worry there, Mike, is it's only for 4 years, because there's no guarantee that we're going to get, Joe Biden has pretty much indicated, hey, listen, I'm just doing this. I just jumped here onto the scene to kind of save the country from the precipice. I'm just going to do this for one term. There's no guarantee that his wing person, Vice President Kamala Harris, will be the next president. We could end up with a very competent fascist in 2024, because it doesn't seem like the Republican Party learned anything from this particular exercise. They didn't really get, I mean, okay, Trump got unelected, but they actually gained seats in the House.
Sure.
They still kept their majority in the Senate. I don't think they learned anything, and I'm really worried that, you know, we'll go right back. But first of all, it's going to take a while to fix all of what's happened over the past 4 years of Trump, because what he did in 4 years, I mean, it takes some folks like 8, 10 years to do, right? He really just messed things up. So by the time we get to the end of the Biden administration, there's still all this stuff to fix, or by the time this stuff kind of starts bubbling, it's too late. And then say we suddenly get another Republican, the public forgets about the pandemic and all of that and what Republicans did, and we get another like fascist Republican in the White House in 2024.
Well, that's a very real concern, unless we stop thinking that the Republicans have learned anything. The Republicans have learned that they are at war, and they have learned that if they continue on the track that Trump set them on, they increase their numbers. Remember, he went from 63 million in support and looking like a clownish buffoon across the world to 74 million, and he don't give a doggone about whether he's got any type of world support, because he's cozied up to the folks that he started with, and that's Vladimir Putin and his folks down in the Middle East. Now, that being said, white supremacy is what Trumpism is. Trumpism is a euphemism for white supremacy. They are fighting for their country back. And if the Democrats, now that's where the learning needs to happen. If the Democrats have not learned that this is a war and we need to win the war over the future fate of all of us, particularly black and brown folks, if we haven't learned that lesson, then you're right. Your concern is very well founded. We could swing right back into fascism.
Yeah, that's my big worry there. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. We got Mike Green joining us by Skype. You can watch him on WURD TV too. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. However, if you'd like to join him here during our conversation, we have Mike Green on with us periodically as one of our regular panelists. Mike, I have to ask, because we had the recent jobs numbers. They just came out this Friday. I know you looked at that. I know you looked at, even in particular, black unemployment numbers. And, I always wonder, I've been asking this question out loud, why is it normal for businesses to shed jobs during a recession? Now, depression, I guess I don't like it, but I guess I can kind of understand like why those businesses, the businesses will just fold, but especially when you look at what societies in places like Germany, France also is like, hey, you know what, we got to stop doing this when recessions happen. We just naturally shed jobs. England even, but it's like a normal thing. We just accept it. And I'm like, where is it written in stone that that's acceptable?
Well, we have to understand the landscape of employers in this country, first of all. Okay, so let's start there. The landscape of employer, 100% of employers make up about 1.7% of the total population. Okay, so that's the landscape of employers. Of that landscape, 80% are white. So that leaves 20% of that landscape as non-white, and more than half of that are Asian. So you can see the pie gets smaller and smaller when you get to black and brown employers, which are very few. Now, so we're dealing with the large scale 80% of white employers in this country. And the trend that you're talking about, every time there's an economic downturn, every time there's a challenge, these companies lay people off. Now, here's what they lay off. They lay off robotic workers. And the reason why they lay off robotic workers is because they cannot lay off innovative, entrepreneurial workers that have critical thinking and problem-solving skills. You can't lay those off because those are essential workers. Because at the end of the day, the reason why a business is in business is to make a profit.
Right.
And if you're not making a profit, because your revenues are being cut, whatever it may be, economic recession, depression, COVID, whatever the reason is, if your revenues are going down, you're going to cut expenses.
Yeah.
And when you cut expenses, you're going to cut your least valuable workers. And so at the end of the day, that's the nature of business. It's all about the bottom line, because otherwise they don't keep the doors open. And right now, what we see with the COVID is that the National Bureau of Economic Research in the summer told us that the most impacted businesses are your black-owned businesses. 41% of them shuttered during the summer. They're expected half by the end of the year to be gone permanently. Yeah. So keeping the doors open is key. And if that means shedding jobs, that's what businesses do.
Which is, I want to follow up on that too, Mike, but I want to take this call from Prince out of Schuylkill, who wants to join in on our conversation. Prince, can you hear us? Thanks for joining us on Reality Check. What's happening?
Thank you. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, Mike, when I grew up, my brother and I, on the weekends, we would go down. So my uncle was a cement finisher. So we would go down, we would make mud, we would put the scaffold up, and then when we turned 18, we started stuccoing basements and laying brick. And so what happens is some of the people who get this trade from their fathers and grandfathers and uncles, they get into these jobs. But when you start throwing numbers out there like that, we become microscoped by black people who see us working but don't have the intricate skills to do what we did and want to know how they can get on. Well, some people, with our skills, we didn't have to take the test because we had enough skills to go on a job and be a mason. Some people who don't have those skills and they come on a job and you put them on a job, and once they carry 2 buckets of mud and they don't know how to make the mud, they don't know to put the 4 scoops of sand with the bag of lime and cement. And so even African Americans on those jobs aren't willing to train and teach somebody coming on a job. And so I think we should be more finding the places that get them properly trained and stop seeing African Americans on these jobs and running up to them and saying, how come you ain't got more people on the job? Because my brother and I, we just wanted to work. You understand what I'm saying? And we knew the craft that we were working in. But I just need, guys can't just say what's not happening. You got to build the training programs to make it happen, because what you do is you hurt the people who are qualified that are working on the job, because, we become to that company, that white company, they start asking us questions about black people, and that's unfair, because we're competing because we're getting hired every day, we're coming to work every day, so we shouldn't be the one you ask questions about how do we bring more blacks on, or where the training programs, or because a lot of people in construction don't know all that. And I just wanted to throw that out there because I think that's relevant.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Prince. This is some good comments, good thoughts, good questions. Mike, you want to address that?
He's bringing up some very good points. But I think there's some background that is missing that I think your audience should know, that we've gone through 3 transitions of our economy: an agrarian economy, 19th century agrarian economy, agriculture, a 20th century manufacturing economy, and now we're in a 21st century tech-based, globally competitive innovation economy. And that means we're competing with people all over the world. And so if we're not educated through STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, and I throw the arts in there, STEAM educated, if that's not our basic framework, when we get onto the job, we may be very skilled in labor, but we also have to be skilled in critical thinking, problem solving, and entrepreneurial skills. And so that creates a more valuable worker. And the gentleman is absolutely right. If the people on the job are not helping to train and create that pipeline of apprenticeship and mentorship for our own, then we've got a problem. But upstream, we've got to, in education, we've got to be cognizant that we inherited a whole landscape of schools that are training our kids for this kind of economy.
Yeah, that's a very good point too, Mike, because and that becomes even harder when, I've been focused on, especially the past few weeks now, the illiteracy crisis. 54% of Americans can't read above a sixth grade level. About 20% of that number is reading below a third grade level. So that's like trillions of dollars in lost economic productivity. It's something that we're just not talking about. I guess we're too embarrassed to talk about it. A lot of adults out there don't want to admit that they can't read, or they can't read at a high level. This is particularly pernicious among black adults or the black community. Not just black adults, but also our young people too. You got a quarter of black adults are functionally illiterate nationwide. And you look at like reading proficiency rates among young black people, middle school, high school, it's bad. It's really bad. So, that we really have a lot of catching up here to do on that. On that STEM piece, on the types of skills we need, I was having a conversation with an economist recently who was saying that, he feels that he felt a little optimistic. He feels things are headed towards middle skills, right? So it's like it doesn't require a college degree. And he feels like things are transitioning away from that total reliance on college anyway, and colleges are going to get hammered, already getting hammered in this pandemic, because people are realizing, they know that the gig is up. The hustle has been exposed. Like, it's like, oh, we paying like $50,000 for what? We still paying $50,000 a year for us just to sit in a Zoom classroom, half y'all professors not even showing up. So that's another whole conversation. But he's saying now we have the creation of like a middle skills job market, right, where it's like, don't need a college degree, but you need that level. You need to know kind of basic STEM skills, right? Or even now, may not need a full college degree. You can get things like, and I'm starting to see this, like micro bachelors or micro masters, things that, certifications. Do you think that that's the future? Does that provide some promise to our community? Hey, okay, you don't have to go into $50, $80, $200,000 worth of debt, to go to college just to get this degree, and then you end up jobless even after doing that, and or you end up not getting the job you need to get out of that debt. But you know what, this middle skills thing, I can do that. I can navigate in that environment.
So, man, you touched on so many different issues right there.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on college, because a high school diploma is insufficient to compete in a tech-based, globally competitive innovation economy. Now, that being said, you're going to need higher education. Now, the business of higher education really needs to be disrupted so that there isn't so much student debt. Actually, we have the capability of making college free, and it should be. So because we know we need that kind of pool of talent, we need to cultivate that talent. Now, that being said, let's move over to the literacy point. That point right there is interesting, because the level of illiteracy in this country among black people today is far less than it was in 1865, when 4 million newly freed black people came out of bondage and were hungry. I mean, hungry for knowledge, and parents taught their kids.
That's right.
And we 100 HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, were created in the 100 years coming out of 1865. 200 cities, not just communities, 200 entire cities were built by black folks in the first 20 years. Man, we were hungry.
Yeah.
We wanted to compete. Now, here's the thing. If you have an illiteracy rate of, make it up, 25% black adults, I don't know what it may be in the among children, but if you can't read, you can't teach a child to read. So at the end of the day, I would ask you, what is the level of let me put it this way: inspiration, perspiration, desire for adults, black people, to master this language.
Yeah.
And compete on that level. What is the level of inspiration, perspiration, and desire?
Yeah.
Because to me, that really is the problem. And if we're not willing to improve ourselves to compete, there's only two things that they test our kids on when our kids go to college: your communication skills, English, and your math skills.
Right.
critical thinking, problem solving, logic. So those are your two buckets. And if we're not proficient as adults, and if we are not taking on the responsibility of teaching our kids, then what are we doing? Charles, well, I'll tell you what we're doing. And this is going to enrage some people, but you know the truth hurts.
Tell it.
What we're doing is abdicating our responsibility for educating and training and preparing our kids to compete in this society. And we're abdicating that responsibility and handing it over to white women because they are the majority of the teachers of our children. And our children are in the lowest quality schools in the richest nation. And if we aren't teaching our children, then we're abdicating that responsibility and handing it over to white women to teach our children. And guess what? They're not doing it.
That's interesting.
They don't want to, because they don't really have the capacity to do it.
Right, and you know what? It's interesting you brought that up because one of our other contributors, contributing editor over at the B Note, Dr. G.S. Potter, just wrote about this Monday. It's a piece entitled "Maybe Karen is the Reason We Can't Read," and just pointed out that all those major social service infrastructural sectors and industries that we rely on, Black, brown, indigenous people, white women dominate. They dominate as teachers, and so there's no surprise then when we find like these low performance rates or low response rates in some of these industries and sectors. Real quick, before I let you go, Mike, there was a listener who was watching us on WURD TV, Raphael Suleiman. He wants me to ask how you think the advent of the automation economy will affect low-skilled, low-income Black populations like those we find in Philly. He says, I think that COVID and the possibility of another pandemic in the future will usher in the technology economy even sooner.
Okay, so you got some bright listeners.
Right, we do.
At the end of the day, we have decoupled the relationship between profitability and the number of workers you need to create that profitability. And the reason why we have decoupled that, back in the manufacturing industry and the economy, you needed a whole lot of workers to create a whole lot of profit. Today, you need a lot fewer workers to create a lot more profit. And so that's that decoupling. And what technology has done is created efficiencies in the way we produce goods and services. Those efficiencies means that we can make a lot more money with a lot fewer workers. And so if you're not entrepreneurial, and I mean every kid that we raise should have entrepreneurial skills, whether they're going to have their own business or not. If they're going to be in someone else's shop, they better make themselves very valuable as critical thinking, problem solving, entrepreneurial, skilled workers. Otherwise, I don't know what we're going to do with a lot of folks who don't have the skills to compete in a 21st century innovation economy.
Yeah. Maybe that's the conversation for next time we bring you on, like figuring that piece out. You always give me a lot of food for thought when we bring you on, Mike Green. Go to Mike Green 2 on social media. Mike Green, cultural economist, also founder, leader of the National Institute for Inclusive Competitiveness. Go to nicusa.org for more information. Check them out, niicusa.org. He's teaming up with some folks here in Philly, in fact, to spread that gospel, spread that word, trying to get people competitive, trying to get them to compete. Mike Green, everyone, joins us here as a regular contributor on Reality Check at Mike Green 2. Mike, as always, thanks for your time.
Wonderful, Charles. Thank you.
All right. I'll give you some of your sleep back out there on the West Coast. But if you're a military man, you already used to getting up early. So if you're a former military man, so I know how that goes. Thanks so much. Take care. All right. Let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we will be talking to Michelle Watley for a strategist segment coming up here next on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What's up, Philly? It's Solomon Jones. The school year is underway, but never before has that experience come in so many shapes and sizes. Is the education of your child being left to a smattering of clumsy, in-person, and virtual instruction? The COVID-19 crisis has created a market for untested virtual teaching models lacking true credibility. Maybe it's time to reconsider and check out Commonwealth Charter Academy. Here are the benefits to your family. 1, an online education provided at no cost to you complete with laptop, headset, and help with internet access. 2, partnership with the market leader in cyber education with a nearly 20-year track record of world-class learning. 3, delivery of a safe, reliable, and comfortable education experience over the internet directly to the confines of your living room. Visit ccaeducate.me today and discover the gold standard of cyber education. That's ccaeducate.me.
Have you heard about City Council's plan to build more affordable housing, repair existing homes, create jobs, and support small business? The Neighborhood Preservation Initiative will invest $400 million in Philly communities. Read about it at www.phlcouncil.com/NPI.
Last year, the Pennsylvania Lottery contributed over $1.2 billion to programs that benefit older Pennsylvanians. Programs like senior centers and hot meals, long-term living services and home care, property tax and rent rebates, transit rides, and much more. To learn more, visit PALottery.com and check out the interactive map to see how the Pennsylvania Lottery benefits older residents in your county. Players must be 18 or older. Please play responsibly.
Man, this coronavirus has us all moving differently.
No doubt. Like washing our hands more and social distancing with the crew. I'm always telling people to give me 6 feet. We're here, Grandma.
There's my babies. Good to see you got your mask on.
Wear a mask. Stop the spread. For more information, visit www.pa.gov/COVID.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Want to buy black for the holidays?
WURD Radio has got you covered. WURD is proud to present our virtual holiday marketplace online. Support local, small, black-owned businesses through the marketplace and purchase your holiday gifts today. Visit wordradio.com/marketplace or wordworks.com/marketplace. Reality Check
with Charles Ellison.
Right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, Troy, you got to bring that beat back. I love that. Love that. Bring that beat back next time, next loop. We're back at it here on our strategist segment. We got our regular weekly strategist segment. Joining us now is political strategist Michelle Whatley. Go to @MichelleL.Whatley on social media. She's done a couple of presidential campaigns, got a presidential campaign under her belt, other campaigns too, state, local, federal, otherwise, is based out there in Kansas City, joins us regularly. We're always pleased to have her. We're honored to have her here among our contributor pool on Reality Check WURD. Michelle, what's good? We have you by phone.
Hey, I'm good, and I'm honored that you are honored to have me. Like, that's quite the intro.
All right, excellent, excellent. Yeah,
on a Tuesday morning.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, we try to bring smart people on when we can. And you're one of them. So we appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time when you can. So I know you've been watching with curiosity. Now we're kind of, you sort of, having rubber meet road, so to speak. The election's done. We're finished with that. So now here comes the hard work, the heavy lift. The president-elect is going through a transition. Just your kind of overall take before we get into a deeper conversation, we get into the weeds of that, but how you think the Biden transition is going based on some of the picks that you're seeing now. We're getting a sense out of those picks as to what the president-elect's agenda with the Biden-Harris administration agenda will be and how they'll go about that. And so how do you think that's going right now so far?
Yeah, I think it's going as well as it can be because for a number of us, the election is over before other folks in this country and other so-called leaders, it's not. And so the transition team and the incoming administration has had the challenge of, again, not being brief, not having the traditional resources and information that would normally be available to the incoming president and vice president, not there. And so, and then you have, again, all of the challenges with COVID and just where we are as a nation. So there's so many barriers, but I think that the Biden-Harris team has done a good job of, for the most part, adhering to what it is that they said they would do, which is create cabinets and develop leadership picks that reflect the diversity not only of this nation but of the electorate. And I think so far they've done a good job. There's been some pushback that the top cabinet picks, while they've been diverse, they often have not been black, and I think that's a fair and astute assessment. And so I think the Biden-Harris transition team could stand to look at how they could ensure that not only transition picks but top cabinet picks are reflective of the electorate that got them into office. And so I do think that's a glaring issue that has been pointed out, and rightfully so. So it would be interesting to see how the transition team readjusts, if they do at all, to address that concern.
Yeah, talk about representation too, because as the saying goes, representation matters. And we did see last night, it came out over the wire, former retired Army General Lloyd Austin will be the first black defense secretary, which is a big deal. We were just joking about that in the last segment. So one of our contributors is former military, is a veteran himself, and he was like, it took a lot for a brother like that. He's like, healthy dose of respect for a brother like that to now be in charge of the white man's army, as he was putting it. So he said that is not an easy task. So he had to do quite a bit of lift to get to that point. But so that's significant. Cecilia Rouse will be the top economist in the country, cabinet level. She will be a cabinet level post. I think Biden elevated that position in response to that conversation that you just talked about. But I don't get a sense still, and I was asking the last guest this, I want to get your thoughts on this. I don't get a sense from the black political leadership, the black political class, about exactly what the agenda is. What is the list of demands? What is the agenda, that black agenda, so to speak, for 2021? And so there's this big focus on, and I think it's kind of an old school strategy, like, oh, let's make sure we have the black faces at the table. And it's like, okay, that was the strategy, that was the lead strategy back in the 70s and 80s, but now we're in 21st century. I need to know what the agenda is. Like, what's that the coherent, crystallized, sharp agenda for black people, especially in the middle of a pandemic and economic meltdown, and also on the cusp of like racial fascism that we avoided, but we're still kind of in this murky area. What is that agenda heading into 2021?
I think that's a great question, and there's a lot there to unpack. I think that going back to your earlier point that while it is great that you're seeing top cabinet picks, it's almost, I wouldn't say mute, but it's not as effective if there's not an agenda that accompanies having black leadership at the helm. And as we've seen across the board, having black leadership at the helm doesn't always equate to change. Putting black leadership at the head of systems that are inherently flawed doesn't lend itself to creating change. It just means that the black person at the top is now responsible for whatever that system produces, although they may not always be in the best position to change those systems. Systems are built to maintain themselves, so it's difficult to change systems, and when you're the first black of anything, it's difficult to come in and create sweeping change. But I digress. I think that part of the challenge,
that's a good point.
Part of the challenge as the African American black community is when we go into and we engage in political arenas, we don't often come to the table from the jump with our agenda. And so when we offer our vote or lend our resources or time and talent and help candidates become successful in their efforts, it's been hard to come back and say, okay, now this is our agenda and this is what we want to see. You got to come to the table ready to play your cards at the start of the game. And so I'm always challenged with the what is the black agenda. I think that on some level there's just baseline issues that we could all agree on that need to be fixed. We all agree that coronavirus has disproportionately impacted black folks in the areas of jobs and housing, economic impact, and health disparities. So off top, those should be the very first items that anybody looking to create change or policy should be addressing if they're doing it in the vein of helping black folks. That should be the agenda of the Congressional Black Caucus. That should be the agenda of any, black cabinet head. That should be the agenda of the Biden-Harris administration because, again, the Americans suffering the most from the impacts of the coronavirus are black people.
Yeah.
And if we're about ensuring that people can bounce back from the coronavirus, that we are expending resources to ensure that Americans come out of this, then you've got to focus on those who are feeling it the most, and that's black folks. As far as the old school approach of focusing on picks but not having an agenda, I think that harkens back to why you're hearing complaints from organizations like the NAACP and the Urban League about them not being at the table.
Yeah.
Because they are old school, and this is how this typically works. You get elected, and you contact us, and we tell you who those picks should be, but I just think that we are in a different political and movement space in which there are emerging movement leaders who, utilize a distributed leadership model in which there is no one head or voice. They have done a phenomenal job of getting their tentacles into the grassroots and being able to really evolve and meet the needs of black people where they are. And so when I hear that the NAACP and the Urban League are frustrated or upset because they're not at the table, I begin to question, is it that you're mad that there are no black voices at the table? Do you feel like black voices and issues are not being represented, and that's why you're mad you're not at the table because you're that voice? Or are you just mad because you're not at the table?
Exactly.
And is that really beneficial, at this point? Because then the NAACP is saying we haven't been reached out to, but Ms. Hatcher Rep, Color Change, is saying I talk to them on a daily basis. And Color Change has been on the ground, directly dealing with black folks and have a good sense of, and ear to the ground of, what the issues are for black folks. So are you mad that it's not you, or are you mad that, or are you concerned that there's not black voices in the decision-making process? I think that, go ahead.
No, I think it's a very, very key point that you're making. It's an astute point you're making there, Michelle, because I wonder about that too. And I wonder if quietly, if not President-elect Biden, but Vice President Harris, other folks who are on that team, who hail from some of those movements, or at least have navigated in those movement spaces, right? Like, let's take Simone Sanders, for example, who helped Biden win his campaign. She kind of hails a bit from that space. Even though she's been a political strategist, political operative, she's like been that liaison or that bridge between that space. And there are others like her like that. I'll just one name that kind of pops to mind at the moment. I know I'm missing other folks, or people even like you, political strategists who navigate in those spaces. You know those two worlds. You're that bridge between the grass tops and the grassroots in this new movement climate that we find ourselves in. And I wonder if that's kind of what's going on. It's not ignoring black interests so much. It's, you know what, we kind of want to talk to a whole new crop of people. We understand you guys are going, the black political leadership space is going through a whole disruptive transition right now. We want to talk to those new folks. And how do we do that? And maybe they're afraid to say that directly to the Mark Morials, the Al Sharptons, and others, to just say, hey, listen, y'all got to figure out a way to facilitate all these folks, not just you, the old school, but the new school, everyone being in the same room and being able to talk. I wonder if that's kind of what's going on, if what's happening, because it is kind of curious. President-elect Biden, he hasn't sat down there's no indication that he sat down with them yet or scheduled a meeting like this kind of big, meeting of the minds or Sherpas to sort these things out.
Yeah, I would agree that's probably the case, and it's not that these civil rights, the traditional civil rights orgs are irrelevant. They're relevant, and they need to make room. At the end of the day, you can't ignore an organization like Color of Change, who was on the ground in key states making sure black voters got out to vote. You can't ignore organizations like Black PAC. You can't ignore organizations like the Collective PAC, who raised millions upon millions of dollars to help not only get out the vote, but get black folks elected. These organizations have built power bases that make them relevant players in the political, black political landscape and scene, and they can't be ignored. And so civil rights orgs need to make room, because civil rights orgs also have not done the best job. I would say that they failed to connect with newer generations of not only movement leaders, but the grassroots. I would imagine that there would be some younger people, millennials and younger, who would argue that the NAACP doesn't necessarily represent their issues or could not be the voice for those generations. The NAACP is not talking about student loan debt and how to eradicate student loan debt. That's an issue that impacts wealth and the ability to build generational wealth for millennials and younger, and that's not what you're hearing from the NAACP, right?
And that's a good point. I wonder if they are going to talk about that, because they get a lot of their money from banks like Wells Fargo. So does the Urban League. They get some of their money. They get some of their donations, contributions from these big banks who are using them kind of as conduits. I'm just putting it out there. I'm just saying, we see it, who use them as conduits to get new customers. So, they give them, and it's like they've got to kiss the civil rights rings, so the civil rights leaders and organizations won't give them a hard time publicly and embarrass them. They're like, okay, all right, we'll cut you a check for $1 million. All right, just leave us alone. And maybe find us some customers at the same time. But, so maybe that's one of the reasons why. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just real talk here. And some of that has to be changed. It has to be disrupted.
And I don't know that it even has to be changed. If that's the lane of the NAACP, the Urban League, National Action Network, if that is their lane, that's their lane. But there are many lanes on the Autobahn of black movement space. And so there needs to be room for the organizations like Color of Change, like Black PAC, like Collective PAC, like Shirley's Get Together, that do the work in a different way, that are meeting folks where they are, that are nimble enough to find other sources of funding so that they're not beholden to the same organizations that they need to call out to create change. When you use a distributed leadership model, the benefits are that your organization can be nimble, that you can get into spaces and have discussions that an organization like the NAACP may not be able to have. Maybe they can't talk about the impact of student loans and economic wealth development in the black community because they're taking money from Wells Fargo. When you operate like Color of Change does, with that type of leadership model, you don't have those same barriers and obstacles to movement work. They're both relevant, they're both needed, and these old school orgs got to make room at the table. They got to scooch down a bit and be ready to sit next to emerging and upcoming leaders for the sake of the black community as a whole, to even raise the issue that they're not being consulted without assessing the fact that there are still black voices at the table, and not working to figure out how they can collaborate, connect with, or work with voices that are maybe already at the table so that a black agenda or issues, plate can be pushed forward, I think it's a missed opportunity and a missed conversation.
I agree. Smart conversation, food for thought from Michelle Watley joining us here on Reality Check today. Go to, as always, on social media for engagement at Michelle L. Watley, former National African American Political Director for the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign and founder of the Griot Group out there in Kansas City. And she's joining us here, and regular contributor or occasional contributor here on Reality Check WURD. Always good to talk with you, Michelle. Thanks again.
It was good talking to you, Charles. Have a good day.
All right. You do the same. All right. Happy holidays to you. Well, hopefully we'll talk to you before the holidays. So take care. Thanks again. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, just we have some phone lines open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Now, a WURD Radio Vote Beat update. Here's WURD Radio Vote Beat update reporter, Sojourner Ahebe.
I'm Sojourner Ahebe with today's election coverage report. Linda Hayden is 75 years old, and she's one of the 6 million African Americans who left the rural South in the advent of the Great Migration.
The first time I voted, I was 20 years old. Age was 18, but since I was Black, I was not eligible to vote until 1965.
That is until she moved to Philadelphia in the early 60s and cast her first ballot in the city shortly before the passage of the Voting Rights Act. The year was 1964. She was 20 and remembers voting for Lyndon B. Johnson in that presidential election.
I was 16 years old when I left. I came to live with my sister.
With a child on the way, she dropped out of school to find work so she could support her family. Retired now, she worked for 25 years as a school bus driver, and she's one of the 500,000 adults in the city who struggle to read. Catalina Gonzalez is the Senior Manager of Adult Education Services in Philadelphia.
We know that over 500,000 ages 16 and over are struggling to perform basic reading, writing, and math skills.
That's more than a quarter of Philadelphia adults who struggle to read, but they still vote. Hayden has been voting for over 55 years.
I have voters' registration papers at my home. If I know you're turning 18, I make sure you register so you will be able to vote.
But the obstacles to voting when you have low literacy skills still abound. Marcus Hall is an instructor at the Community Learning Center, one of the many city agencies that provide educational resources to low literacy adults in Philadelphia.
Reading the instructions and getting and understanding like where to sign, what not to do, what not to put anything here, what type of ink to use, and like all that stuff, it absolutely takes a certain level of comprehension.
Hayden voted by mail this year and had her daughter help her fill out her ballot. Not everyone has that support, but City Commissioner Lisa Dealey says every voter in Pennsylvania has the right to request assistance, and ballot numbers in particular have been the saving grace for many voters who struggle to read.
You know, people oftentimes use the ballot number as a way to remember to identify the candidates that they choose to support and to vote for.
Philadelphia's poverty rate is double the national average, and research shows the link between low literacy, poverty, poor health, and likelihood of incarceration. In addition, more than half of Hall's adult learners are low income. A sizable portion were formerly incarcerated, and many of them struggle with homelessness. Despite the mounting obstacles, low literacy adults are beating the odds. Hayden enrolled in classes at the Community Learning Center 4 years ago at 71 years old. Now she's studying to get her GED. But she wants you to remember one thing.
I've always believed that voting was and is important. So anyone that's turning 18 this year, please register to vote.
In Philadelphia, Sojourner Ahebe, WURD Radio.
This was a WURD Radio Vote Beat update, presented in partnership with Vote Beat. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent, black media.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back. Phone lines are open, 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, don't forget that you can go to wordradio.com/marketplace, wordradio.com/marketplace if you'd like to buy black for the holidays. And we're proud to present our virtual holiday marketplace online, supporting local small black-owned businesses. And we do that through the marketplace. We've got set up for you wordradio.com/marketplace or wordworks.com/marketplace. So buy black, support black businesses today through the WURD holiday marketplace. So we have to do that virtually. Obviously, you know, we always do the big, robust holiday event where we have all those various black businesses lined up, and there's always a lot of big turnout. That was, you know, in those days before pandemic. Unfortunately, we are in the situation we are in now, but you know, we adapt. And so we've created for you our virtual marketplace, wordradio.com/marketplace. And black communities know all about, you know, throughout our history, we know all about adapting to challenging times and environments. Let me go to Horace out of West Philly calling in for a reality check. Horace, what's up?
Hey, how you feel, Charles?
How you doing, sir? All right, thank you.
I'm doing great. When I give you any kind of numbers about data, I get the data from the school website, the SPR report in the school website. That being said, from your guest that you had this morning, you know, again, I always say that we have to get rid of the superintendent. So we have to be willing to start saying that, number one. Number two is, since you made a comment about Karen, you know, we handing our children over to Karen, and I think Karen makes up 80% of the teachers. Well, the data shows that Karen is not coming to work. You know, that's what the data shows in all these schools. Moving on to back to your guest said about re-engaging the parents into learning again. Well, you can do that by having the parents say to the district, we want to go from virtual back to paper. You know, when we go to the schools to pick up our children's lunches for the week, we want to also pick up their learning packets for the week. You know, we're not talking about going in schools or anything. We're just saying, like, when they hand them the lunches, they can also hand them a learning packet. That way you're re-engaging education back into the household, and you have your child and the adult there learning at the same time. Going on to the next point, you talked about STEM.
So are you saying, Horace, that's an interesting concept. Are you saying, like, not just curriculum for the student, for the child, but curriculum for the adult as well?
Well, right now, they wouldn't have that set up for the adult as well, unless they have, like they used to have evening schools, you know, for those who had dropped out of high school. So I guess they can.
And maybe if to expound on that, you raise an interesting point. I'll let you go because I love where you're headed with this. Maybe, you know, the school district should be thinking about, you know, doing creative things. Like, I know the school district is already on some levels teamed up, for example, with the Community College of Philadelphia. But if we have high, like, functional illiteracy rates amongst Philadelphia adults, then we should assume that many of those adults are parents of Philadelphia public school children. So what are ways in which the school district can, during this time, be a little creative, be a little bit ambitious, and say, okay, hey, listen, we definitely need to raise the bar. We've got these massive achievement gaps that we're seeing among our students here in the school district. This is how I would be thinking if I were the school district or if I were the superintendent. But I know we're also dealing with this adult illiteracy rate. It is a result of how this district has failed, because these are adults that went through our school system, and apparently our school system failed. So how do we make up for that? Oh, okay, well, maybe we can come up with, like you were saying, curriculum or packets for the adults to maybe start getting them a lot more literate. Who do we team up with? What are the resources that we have to maybe help adults through this period to start getting them skilled up and getting ready for this new economy? Because there is a new economy that's coming. It's starting to bubble now, or in this post-pandemic environment. Like, things are going to get automated more. There's going to be a lot less of a reliance on in certain industries like the restaurant hospitality industry, because people are going to be worried about infection. So they're going to be looking for ways to eliminate human beings from certain positions because they'll be worried about spreading things like coronavirus or the next big infection on the horizon. But go ahead, Horace.
Yeah, and seeing to your point, we've always been trying to advocate the school district to test all our students, achievement level. And the district just comes back with their answer to that. We're talking about testing every student, but they came back with we tested 8,000 students, and they fall within our target range. So, that's just a target range, the F target range. But to move on, because, be able to comment is very important. I was going to the point with STEM, or the young man wanted to add an A and say STEAM. And then with those programs, they only give it to a few. We know that's how they do it. But here again, if you brought back the junior high schools, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and you could have that STEM and STEAM in all of those junior high schools. So here, every 7th grader can go through that program. They need to just stop picking and choosing who gets what. Back when I was in school, junior high school, we went and did everything. Everything went through junior high school. So they can do that again. To keep these children in a K-8 model, K through 8, the 7th and 8th graders lose out, and then your 9th graders in high school lose out. So you got to just bring it back to the way it was, And here again, I'm sorry I caught late with the young man coming in, because here again we got a $3 billion industry in education that also is affected through racism and nepotism, and contracts. We talk about toxic schools. We have to change the narrative. These toxic schools get $1 billion pumped into them every year. So if they're so toxic, why is all this money being pumped into these toxic schools, which the money funnels back down into the white community? So here again, I always say, get rid of the superintendent who's going on 9 years of this stuff. We have to learn, we have to be comfortable in saying it's time for him to go. And thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for that, Horace. Yeah, we are going to have to start being comfortable. We need some change, and pretty immediate, as far as the city school system is concerned. And we shouldn't be afraid to say that. It's going to be time to move on, and it's time to deploy a much more aggressive, ambitious strategy. I said that quite a while. I've been saying that since last year, and even wrote about it. And when you're saying those kinds of like low proficiency scores on just the basics like reading and math, that's a problem, and people in Philly are treating it like it's normal. Well, that's just Philly. It's just like with Councilwoman Cindy Bash. She said it at the top of the show, top of today's Tuesday edition. She made a very good point. Just we in Philly, we have a habit of, just because we've been doing things like this for a long time, well, we just accept it as the way it is. And it's the exact same kind of principle and mindset applies to the way we educate, to the way we we non-educate in Philly. Same principle applies. And you need really ambitious, forward-thinking, visionary leadership in the Philadelphia school system, and it is not there right now. Please tell me if I'm wrong on that. Tell me that it is. Tell me that it is where it's supposed to be. I don't hear anybody pushing back against those assertions that I'm making. All right, let me take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to talk with Stephen Brown of the Urban Institute. They have a study out here about problems, challenges in the workplace, and how those problems are impacting disproportionately Black and brown workers. So let's take a break, and we should have Stephen Brown, the Urban Institute, on with us next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jeff Brown from Brown's Family ShopRites and Fresh Grocers. Are you thinking about a part-time job to help out with the cost of the holidays? We have plenty of openings. You can apply online at shoprite.com/careers or freshgrocer.com/careers. Come join the Brown family today and help us serve the people of Philadelphia. Have a great holiday.
Keystone First VIP Choice HMO SNP Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan has a 4 out of 5 star rating and is one of the highest rated Medicare plans in the region. Keystone First VIP Choice and you are better together. If you live in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, or Delaware County, and you have both Medicare and Medicaid, choose the Medicare plan that is working to help you get better care. Enjoy extra benefits at no cost to you with Keystone First VIP Choice. You get benefits like dental, vision, and transportation to and from your medical appointments. They also cover a fitness membership to a gym of your choice. $150 toward over-the-counter pharmacy items. There's no copay for doctor's visits. They offer a large provider network, a great prescription plan, dental coverage, and even eyeglasses. Plus, you don't have to wait for open enrollment. You can change your coverage every quarter. Keystone First VIP Choice. The name you trust, the service you deserve. Call Keystone First VIP Choice today at 1-877-686-1760 or visit KeystoneFirstVIPChoice.com.
Have you heard about City Council's plan to build more affordable housing, repair existing homes, create jobs, and support small business? The Neighborhood Preservation Initiative will invest $400 million in Philly communities. Read about it at www.phlcouncil.com/NPI.
Now's your chance to watch the best new play of the season at home. Philadelphia's Wilma Theater is now streaming the thrilling drama Heroes of the Fourth Turning until December 13th. 4 friends reuniting at their Catholic college in Wyoming as they wait for the arrival of their mentor. Secret passions and fears surface, revealing their troubled place in a divided country. The New York Times raves that Heroes of the Fourth Turning is astonishing. To stream the Wilma Theater's production of Heroes of the Fourth Turning tonight, visit wilmatheater.org.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight. This program is pre-recorded. No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, Stephen Brown is a researcher at the Urban Institute. Go to urban.org for more information on them. He's also one of the authors, along with some of his other colleagues, on a new study that they just dropped recently. It came out last week about the risk of exposure in the workplace to coronavirus and how that is disproportionately impacting Black, Indigenous, Latinx workers. We invited Steve to talk about those findings, to expound on them a bit. He joins us by Skype from Washington, D.C., we assume, so you can watch him on WURD TV as well. We're at, as you know, we are on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, also WURD TV. Go to YouTube or Facebook to our pages to watch us on our Facebook Live and YouTube live streams. Stephen, how are you doing this afternoon? Thanks so much.
I'm good. How are you doing today?
All right. Good. Appreciate you. Thanks so much for this. So, lay out the main findings, takeaways of this study. So it's an analysis where you're looking at ways in which, and we talked about this a little earlier with the labor rights, employment rights lawyer, civil rights lawyer earlier on in this Tuesday edition. someone from the Lawyers Committee about this, about how like just it's really dire out there, in terms of, and a lot of us who were even talking now or listening to this program are living through this. But talk about some of those key takeaways, some of those key problems that you're seeing for Black, Latinx, Indigenous workers, the type of really struggling, challenging environments that you're dealing with right now.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for having me on the program today. We really appreciate you offering us a chance to talk about our research. So like many others, we saw the racial disparities in who was catching and dying from COVID-19 as this data came out in the late spring and early summer. And it soon became apparent that increased exposure due to frontline and in-person work was one of the likely drivers of these disparities. And so we wondered, whether we could provide more insight into who is required by nature of their job to work in person or in close proximity to others. And both those who are both who are officially designated as essential workers and those who are not. And what we find in our report is that 41% of white workers hold in-person jobs, whether essential or not essential, compared to over half of Black, Native American, and Latinx workers. Over half of those groups work in person and essential and jobs that are considered non-essential. And to be clear, so these are folks like doctors and nurses, grocery store workers who were considered essential, as well as folks cutting hair, working in beauty salons, people working the sales counters at Macy's. Right, those folks are still working in person too, and by virtue of working in person, that's the risk factor, right? Those are the people who are going to be exposed to the disease. So, our study looks at the folks who have to work in person, both essential and non-essential, and finds that over half of Black, Native American, and Latinx workers are working in these jobs that require them to be there in person and at greater risk of catching COVID-19.
Yeah. That's and that presents some issues, I suspect, and I know that that's something that you all are looking at over the horizon. That presents some issues, some challenges as far as like the future of work, right, and future of the workspace. What that all looks like, particularly when we've been so focused up until the pandemic on being at those frontline jobs, those front-facing in-person jobs. I mean, a lot of like local Black economies in an urban environment or any major Black environment like a Philadelphia, there's a lot of barbershops and beauty salons, and that's a big industry. It's a huge industry. So what happens? Like what happens? And it was, I remember before pandemic reading something where, just kind of riffing here, but I remember reading something where they were saying that one of the jobs of the future, that a space that people can look at would be like the cosmetic or cosmetology hair profession. Like, hey, that's actually a profession you should look at kind of moving forward into the future as like we get into this gig economy. Also, industries are getting disrupted as a result of AI automation. Well, hey, consider being a barber or a hairstylist or whatever. I don't know. All of that stuff's kind of now, it's like, well, yeah, people need to get their haircut, but everything's in question, up in the air now. So, I'm real curious about the workplace operations. So, I think people need to know that in terms of the demographic groups, which you just laid out, who has the opportunity or the ability to work from home remotely, because we just assume everybody's working from home, and who doesn't. And but I'm real curious about the workspace, how workspaces have modified or recalibrated or morphed during this pandemic, and what that means in terms of labor regulations and labor laws. What are you finding there?
Sure. It's been a challenging environment for employers and workers to adapt to, obviously. Of course, many workplaces have gone remote. Some of those workplaces have started to bring workers back into the fold more slowly. But places that need to work in person, hospitals, restaurants, warehouses, they mandated masks for workers and for folks coming in from the outside, the customers, the patrons. They've instituted social distancing and occupancy caps, but it's difficult, right? In the absence of federal guidance, states and localities are providing the policy guidance, which of course has shifted several times. It's different in some states than others, and they're shifting in response to the pandemic as cases go up and cases go down. And so I think it's been really challenging for employers to figure out what they should be doing. And so I think, they're doing, a lot of them are doing the best they can to provide workers PPE and do that social distancing. But, to some extent, there really needs to be clear guidance from the federal government, both for like how workers should respond, how employers should respond as the cases go up and down, but also some clear guidance for how they can protect workers in this time. And that includes not just PPE, but also protection for sick leave and time off in case folks do get sick.
I know you're primarily focused on the research, but I have to ask, I'm wondering if your team, if you all have talked about this, are you encouraged by or are you confident in those needed changes, those needed standards from the federal government now that you have a new administration coming in? What are you saying? Are you seeing signals that are, or signs that are encouraging as far as what you're saying? I mean, right now, the new administration is still in the transition phase. It's not official yet. They're not running things yet. But based on what you're saying now, do you think we'll finally get that kind of federal guidance?
That's a good question. It's tough because I think there has not, thus far been a commitment around what is going to be the clear federal guidance going forward. And so I think there's been some information trickling out, but no firm commitments. And so I think from a federal standpoint, and so I think I would encourage the new administration to think carefully around what guidance they can provide. I think it's challenging because a lot of these decisions are decided by states and localities, and so I think. But I do think federal guidance around what the standards should be, how we respond as cases go up and down, is certainly going to be really important. And in this environment where we have some vaccines coming online, I think it's also going to be really important to have clear federal guidance on how those vaccines get distributed as well, because that's going to be a crucial part and protecting workers and how we all eventually get back to whatever the new normal is.
Yeah. Hey, Stephen, also, I wonder about like just the structure, the current structure of the economy that allows for these kinds of lapses. And I talk about that, if you guys have been thinking about that more kind of deliberatively about like, the mindset, the type of philosophy or paradigm that leads to these types of lapses, these sorts of lapses and workplace protections and worker protections being, for the most part, acceptable. Like this is an acceptable, normal thing. And so, you know what, you're a frontline worker, well, so what? Like that's your problem. You're just going to have to tough it out. And forcing also workers to make some real hard, difficult choices that they shouldn't have to make. It shouldn't be normal, making a choice between, do I go to work? Or, because I got to go to work, I got to be physically on the spot present at this job, or do I leave my kids at home alone when they're not old enough to be home alone so I can so they can, continue to go to school, but I got to pay the rent, et cetera, et cetera. People making tough choices. What is it about the way this economy operates or the way the kind of mindset around it, the way it's structured that leads to this? And I mean, at some point that's got to change. I mean, we found that that it's not a very resilient kind of model that we're looking at here. It's not, in the long run, if it's all about making money, you're going to lose a lot of money like this.
Great question. I think this disease has broad impacts that cut not just across our economy, but across our society broadly, right? Our ways of life are set up to have in-person interaction. So I think it's less about the economy and how that's structured, and more about which workers are at risk by virtue of their position, and which work and how we support workers, right? And so, of course, there are folks who do have, I don't think few places probably have enough PPE as they need, but some places certainly are better protected. They have more security and protections. And so I think this is about which vulnerable workers and how we protect and support vulnerable workers. And, how we got this position, I think there's a lot of factors that are driving this. I think decreased worker protections, so decreases in unions and organizing, the ability for folks to advocate for workplace protections, I think is a big factor that has affected and led to more vulnerable work. I think we also see the shifting of workers from being employed in the workplace in what's called fissuring, where they move into more independent contractor roles, gig worker contractor roles, and a lot of those jobs don't have or have very minimal protections, right? People can be fired. Well, there's no unemployment, there's no mandatory unemployment insurance. You have to get your own health care, right? not protected against discrimination. So there's a lot of protections that are wrapped up in being employed that a lot of folks, especially if they're gig workers or contractors, don't have access to. And so we need to think more about that. And of course, I think there's clearly a racial element here too, right? And so there are folks who, by virtue of longstanding discrimination and occupational segregation, have had limited access to the kinds of jobs and pathways that would provide them more security in the event of a downturn. And so I think, longstanding structural racism has led to folks being positioned in these jobs and congregated in these jobs that just have less protections. And I think when you add that all together, I think that's where we find ourselves in a situation where we have a lot of workers who are vulnerable, and those workers are predominantly workers of color, Black, Latinx, Native American, and so that's where we are now.
And that's where we've ended up. Any lessons learned, you think, Stephen, as far as what we've seen in the pandemic? Things that work, that don't work. There were some, that first round of pandemic stimulus, as they called it, shows some signs of promise in terms of like, okay, well, this is how we can respond to this or operate in the future, like particularly with the direct payments. And so now it's leading people to understand that, hey, you know what, maybe a whole, kind of universal basic income model is not such a bad thing. Because the economy could have been much worse if not for that, right? So the big question, the big problem was, not doing enough of that. So, lessons learned from how we've responded, maybe how we haven't responded. Also, lessons learned from what we're seeing in other countries and other places. Particularly countries that are guarding against workers having to automatically lose their jobs because of a recession. I think that's something else too that we've grown to normalize. We think, oh, it's a recession. Oh, sorry, we got to shed you. We got to let you go. When you do have governments and other places that have taken steps to guard against that, to prevent that from happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think this is something that came up a lot in the wake of the Great Recession, right? How do we protect workers in the event of a very large downturn? Do we institute retraining programs? Do we provide job assistance and or even essentially guaranteed jobs for folks to be able to go to work and be able to provide for themselves in the event of a downturn? And so I think this is something a lot of folks are thinking about, advocating for really strongly. We have evidence that these programs can work, they can be effective, but I think we still need more research on how to scale them up, how to make them effective, where to locate when to move into something like that as the economy starts to move into a downturn. So I think there's still a lot of interesting and important questions that we need to figure out. But I do think you're right that there needs to be some large-scale protections for workers in the event we have these big downturns. Right? This is our second major socioeconomic downturn in our economy in the past 15 years. And so how do we think about guarding ourselves against these kinds of shocks if they kind of come with this frequency? And so, I think there are a lot of different possibilities, a lot of different options, but I do think whether that comes in the form of employment, whether that comes in the form of kind of expanded UI benefit, unemployment insurance benefits that are more generous or longer term, I think there are still some important questions of how we figure out what works best. But I do think it's clear that some programs that help people keep their incomes, keep their lights on, stay in their houses while we're in these downturns is clearly essential to keep us from moving into a full-scale depression. So whether those come in income supports or employment, I think, again, we still need to do some work to figure out. But I think one of those things, if not both, is clearly necessary.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the little one does in the background as well. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it's definitely a need for an expansive conversation here. This is a good first step, just kind of understanding what's happening out there. I appreciate this work. We've been talking with Stephen Brown, labor sociologist, researcher at the Urban Institute. Go to urban.org. Also, you can check out this study that he's done with his colleagues about the, which workers are at greatest risk of exposure to the coronavirus. I know a lot of folks listening in are dealing with that in real time. A lot of us are dealing with that in real time. And so this is real useful work. And then, we got to talk about like, okay, well, how do we do this differently moving forward? So I'm sure we'll bring you back on, Stephen, to talk about that. Thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it. Stephen Brown joining us here on Skype. You can watch him too on WURD TV. Thanks again, man.
Thanks, Charles. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again. Take care. Be safe out there. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with Christina Greer of the GRIO, and also you see her occasionally on MSNBC, also political science professor at Fordham University. She's going to be joining us next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Have you heard about City Council's plan to build more affordable housing, repair existing homes, create jobs, and support small business? The Neighborhood Preservation Initiative will invest $400 million in Philly communities. Read about it at www.phlcouncil.com/NPI.
Buying something from a dealer just sounds a bit, well, put it like this. My cousin Ray Ray got arrested for buying something from a dealer. So why would you want to buy your car from a dealer? Hi, everybody. This is Nick inviting you to buy your next car from Jerry over at Cardex. See, they're not dealers. They're like a car concierge service. They design a car around you. Almost any make. If it's not on the lot, they'll go out and get it for you. So use my car concierge, where I've already bought 4 cars. Cardex at 116 East Glenside Avenue in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Check them out online at cardexinc.com. Or call Cardex at 215-886-3230.
What's up, Philly? It's Sincerely Sarita. The school year is underway, but never before has that experience come in so many shapes and sizes. Is the education of your child being left to a smattering of clumsy in-person and virtual instruction? The COVID-19 crisis has created a market for untested virtual teaching models lacking true credibility. Maybe it's time to reconsider and exercise your choice. Maybe it's time to check out Commonwealth Charter Academy. Here are the benefits to your family. 1, an online education provided at no cost to you, complete with laptop, headset, and help with internet access. 2, partnership with the market leader in cyber education with a nearly 20-year track record of world-class learning. And 3, delivery of a safe, reliable, and comfortable education experience over the internet directly to the confines of your living room. Visit ccaeducate.me today and discover the gold standard of cyber education. That's ccaeducate.me.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app, or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio, independent black media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. It is our Tuesday edition, winding down before we head into The Source a little bit later on at 1 o'clock. We are at 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com. If you're listening beyond Philly proper and throughout the nation, throughout the world, you're at WURDradio.com or WURD TV. You're watching us on WURD TV at youtube.com/onWURD, facebook.com/4WURD, and you might be watching us on Facebook Live as well. We are at #Reality Check, at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. Join us now, Christina Greer, watching on WURD TV. She is politics editor for thegrio.com, but also teaches politics, political science, and other interesting, intriguing topics at Fordham University in New York City. In fact, you got to check out her book. I've read it. It's a great read. Actually, my daughter read it too. Black Ethnics. Great discussion on Black diaspora politics, which we need to have a discussion about that at one point, sometime in the future, Christina, because it's a great book. We'll do that at some point. We'll get you back on. We need to have you back on more often. You see her occasionally on channels like MSNBC. She joins us here on Reality Check. How are you doing? Thanks so much, Professor.
I'm always happy to be here. Thank you so much
Excellent,
for having
excellent.
me.
Thank you, thank you. It's good to have you. All right. I want to get your thoughts on the Georgia race and how that's unraveling. There's been a lot of focus. It seems like Republicans really honing in their targeting of Reverend Ralph Warnock in a way that they're not doing with John Ossoff, I feel like, right? And, you know, they've created this meme, radical liberal. We saw incumbent Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler in this debate over the weekend between her and Ralph Warnock, where she just constantly called him a radical liberal. And I could have swore she was getting ready to drop that N-word, like, because really it rhymes
She
with
was
that.
hanging out on the line.
Yeah, she was just kind of like radical liberal. Why don't you just say it, girl? Like, you know, just use it. But so it's frankly it's a very racist like term. But I mean, are Democrats, you know, do you think they're in a good position in these two Senate races down there in Georgia?
Yeah, normally I would say, you know, no, that's not the case. But for this particular race, because I think so many people understand that this isn't a race about 2 Senate seats, this is a race about control of the Senate, whether or not Mitch McConnell will continue on being the majority leader or whether or not it'll be Chuck Schumer or some other Democrat. And the larger context is whether or not Joe Biden will be able to enact any sort of agenda. So the Ossoff-Warnock victories mean a lot more, not just for the state of Georgia, but for the future of American democracy and the big D Democratic Party being able to move forward. I think the reason why I'm feeling optimistic, cautiously optimistic, is because of the work, not just of Stacey Abrams, who you know is brilliant and an organizer and just has a vision that, you know, we haven't seen probably in our lifetime, but because Stacey Abrams in Fair Fight and the New Georgia Project that she started many years ago, and organizations like, you know, Black Voters Matter or Southwest Georgia Project or Project South. I mean, there's so many organizations in that state who have been doing the work, not just this year. They've been doing the work for several years to organize Black folks, to register Black people, to help connect local, state, and national issues for Black people. So oftentimes Democrats don't win runoffs because there's a massive drop off. You know, let's be real, voter suppression, voter disengagement, voter disenfranchisement is real. But I think the work of all these organizations, and Black women in particular, obviously, who have been down there doing the work, will at least make this a race that I feel is possible for Democrats, especially since Republicans also can't figure out their messaging, right? You've got some Republicans saying, well, you know, Kemp and the Secretary of State and even Loeffler and Perdue need to be punished, so don't vote for them. So that's coming out of Republican messaging. We know the president went down there, but he can't figure out what messaging he wants because he still wants the governor to recount the state for a 4th or 5th time. So, you know, if he gets upset that that's not going to happen, then who knows what he'll try and blow up in the state of Georgia, because he doesn't care about the party, and he definitely doesn't care about the future of the party if he's not in it. So, I mean, that's kind of the lay of the land. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Loeffler's comments about Warnock were definitely, they weren't even racially coded. She's trying to paint him and his Black skin as this extremist, right? We know that a few weeks ago, she tried to link him to Reverend Jeremiah Wright. They tried to link Barack Obama to Reverend Jeremiah Wright in 2008. So, I mean, they're using old, desperate playbooks. But I do think that, you know, as a Black man running against a blonde white woman, he has to, in the South, he has to be very strategic about how he goes on the offensive. I know a lot of people in the debate really wanted him to be a lot more aggressive. But when men debate women, when Black people debate white people, when we have a male versus a female, a Black person versus a white person, there's a very thin needle that you have to thread because of the historic racism in this country. So even when Stacey Abrams debated Brian Kemp, she had to be careful, right? Because she couldn't come across as too smart, too quote unquote aggressive. You know, all essentially white politicians do is say, like, I'm frightened. Like, why are you yelling at me? And we know, you know, for any of us who've ever been in a classroom or a boardroom or a PTA meeting, we could just be saying something completely just on average, just in an average tone, and we can see tears and people are frightened and I was threatened by you. And it's like, wait, what? So this is also what Warnock is doing, or has to, sort of be careful of. That's why I think his ads have been so brilliant, because these ads are operating on multiple levels to talk about Loeffler, but present himself as someone who's not threatening. And sadly, we still have to do that in 2020.
Yeah, we saw like a blip of that issue or that challenge back in 2008, right? When Barack Obama was running the primary against Hillary Clinton. And it was that conversation came up, like, is he too aggressive? He's got to step it back a little bit, turn it down a notch. Like, well, why? It's a political campaign. You got to compete. You got to do what he's got to do. But, especially when you have a black man going up against a white woman. And maybe that's what that was all about, Loeffler trying to set Warnock up. And Warnock's team, Warnock himself, smelling that, they smelled the trap, and they're like, nope, I know exactly what's being played here. Questions about that, though, because I'm I want to be cautiously optimistic, but I'm still on the fence because, when I look at those initial numbers, those November 3rd numbers, I looked how it played out for Loeffler and Warnock, and there was that second Republican who was, oh my gosh, his name just escaped me. I think it was not Cunningham, but someone else who was in the race in that crowded field. And, so you had, they got about 25% of the vote. So we would assume that those were Republican voters. So how does Warnock convert those Republican voters into enough voters for him to go up against a one-on-one against Loeffler? I would assume that those votes are going to automatically go to Loeffler unless there are Republican voters who are just so depressed and they're like, you know what, I'm enough of this already. I'm going to sit this one out. Or two, they're really I like how the way you framed it earlier in this conversation where you're saying, hey, this is not just about Georgia. This is about do we want a government that's run by Mitch McConnell? That's that's the essence of the argument here. And so, that's where people were like, that's why you had people vote for Joe Biden, but then down ballot, they weren't voting for Democrats. They felt like, you know what, I want to still keep the government split. I don't want a one-party government. So maybe I don't know, maybe that's what's going to kind of bring people to Warnock's side on this, but it's tough in a southern state like Georgia, though.
Right, and I think you're spot on, Charles. We have to remember, this is still the South. Right. Yeah. And so, yes, Biden was able to win after, sort of counting and recounting. But, Georgia hadn't gone to a Democrat since 1992. And then before that, the last time it had gone to a Democrat was with Jimmy Carter, right, the son of Georgia. But going back to the Senate races, I think that the caution, I am definitely cautiously optimistic. And I think, part of it is a little bit of what I want to happen versus what will necessarily happen. When we look at the data, this is a special election. So, this is why we have 2 Senate seats, because most people know, and for those of your listeners who don't, we stagger our Senate races, right? So a third of the Senate is up every 2 years. So every 2 years, everyone in the House, all 435 members are up, but only a third of the Senate. And so this is a special election. Whoever is victorious will have to run again in 2 to 4 years so that they'll be off cycle against the winner of the Purdue-Ossoff matchup. What makes this one so interesting is that, Charles, they had 21 people in this race, in this special election. And so if you look at the top, say, 6 winners, it went Raphael Warnock with 33% of the vote, 30.9, but 33% of the vote. Kelly Loeffler in second place with roughly 26%. Then Doug Collins, who's also a Republican. This was we call it a jungle primary where everybody can be in, right? It's not a closed primary. Closed primaries are, if I'm a registered Democrat, I can only vote in the Democratic primary. This one, everybody's on the ballot. But if you look at the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th place winners, they're all Democrats. Now, granted, they only got 6.6%, 2.8%, 2.2%, 2%. But you kind of add those all up, it looks like it could take Raphael Warnock, when you add up all the numbers, it could take him over that 50% mark. We do know we're going to see some drop-off, but we're going to see some drop-off, obviously, with the Democrats, which is traditional. But because of the mixed messaging from the president and from the state parties and Republican leaders who are coming into the state, then we could see some drop-off with Republicans. I mean, the fact that Perdue didn't show up for his debate against Ossoff, that could suppress some Republican turnout, which would then affect Loeffler because they'll all be on the same ballot on the same day. I think also, though, we have to remember the organizations that I listed before, Black Votes Matter, New Georgia Project, Fair Fight, Project South, Southwest Georgia Project. All of them have been, working with and organizing Black people over the years. But the organizations that specifically work on voting, what they have been saying, what Stacey Abrams has been saying on television is, let's take advantage of this early voting. You don't have to wait until January 5th. Let's win this thing in early voting. So the Democrats get it out of the way before the holidays. You don't have to worry about anything. You've done your civic duty for 2020. And so let's take advantage of this opportunity and make sure, yesterday I think was the last day for registration. Make sure that you wrap it up and you don't even have to think about it in the weeks ahead. And so I think that that's been a huge push for a lot of organizations to try and get people out before the actual January 5th deadline.
And, if it's one thing, folks in Georgia, especially in places like Atlanta, if it's one way they like to be in the spotlight. Atlanta, Atlanta folks, especially Atlanta Metro folks, they love being in the spotlight. And this whole race is putting them, or since November 3rd, and flipping the state to Biden, it's put them in the spotlight. And I think there's a bit of energy because I'm seeing some interesting numbers, like in terms of the number of people registered. In preparation for that runoff, some impressive numbers, in terms of at least what we're seeing initially, preliminarily, in terms of the number of people registered and getting ready for January 5th. And so I think people are thriving, Black voters in particular in Georgia are thriving, they love the attention, which is a good thing. They love that attention. Like, yeah, this is up. It's down to us here, Georgia, ATL, y'all, you know what I mean? So
right.
And they're having their moment. Beyond just the hip hop and the Real Housewives of Atlanta, it's like they got this real big moment where everything hangs in the balance. And I think Stacey Abrams has maximized, she's leveraged that, and she's playing off of it. Folks like her and others, and it's all about ground game and turnout.
Right. I mean, it always makes me think of when Outkast says, the South's got something to say, right?
Right.
It's like, and I think, because ATL primarily, if the Democrats are successful, it's like it is ATL that delivers it, right? So it's like you deliver Joe Biden unified government, you deliver him a Democratic Senate, and unlike Beto, right, who after he lost, he went on his road trip and cleared his head and it was all about him. It's like Stacey had to lick her wounds and she got back to work.
She did.
Right? And so when you think about Fair Fight, the organization she started, you know what states they were in?
Yeah.
Georgia, Arizona,
that's right,
Nevada,
that's right,
Michigan, Wisconsin. That's where they've been working for the past 2 years.
Yep.
We see a theme here, people. We see a pattern. I mean, where the DNC and Tom Perez have been wholly incompetent in recognizing the power of Black people and Latinx folks and indigenous people and poor people. They keep chasing this mythological white male, rural voter who was a Democrat during the era of Jimmy Carter, right? Yeah. This working class white male voter. It's like, guess what? They left the dance. They're not with us. They didn't bring us to the dance. They didn't stay at the dance. They're not at the dance. So stop chasing them. At a certain point in time, we got to recognize it's been 40 years since that guy was a Democrat.
Right.
Leave him alone. Why don't you work on getting new people, which is what Stacey Abrams and Fair Fight and New Georgia Project have been doing. Why don't you galvanize people who are ripe for the picking, who understand the issues? All you have to do is help register them. Or if they're registered, all you have to do is help them turn out.
Right.
Even despite voter suppression. So I think that what that organization has been able to do in 6 crucial states and show results should hopefully be a blueprint for whomever the new DNC chair is, so we can stop focusing on people who don't want us and focus on the people who we could easily help galvanize and articulate a vision and a mission and actually bring in more people and win these things. I mean, we've left so many states off the table like, oh, they're not winnable. Really? Arizona now has 2 Democratic senators.
Right.
Really? Stacey Abrams has been ringing this alarm about Georgia for 10 years. Yeah. She's been saying there are 16 electoral college votes on the table. Why are we not going after them? Why are we chasing Ohio, which keeps showing us time and time again it's red? Why do we keep chasing Florida, which even though it's close in the margins, it's like, but if we spend so much money in Florida, what if we took some of that money out of Florida and put it in other places? They could be solidly blue. solidly blue.
Solidly blue.
Arizona
You don't have to worry
could be
about
solidly blue. Nevada could be solidly blue. We should not have to worry about Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin if we actually focused our efforts there. We actually could, not just in presidential election years, but in midterm election years as well. You know, we've got this blue wall on the West Coast with Washington, Oregon, California. We can shore up the blue ceiling in Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin if we pay attention. We can start sort of creating a blue oasis in the Sun Belt area in Nevada and Arizona. We can start chipping away in the South, and sort of Georgia's just the beginning, but like, you know, Florida to me, we can have some puddles, right? I mean, realistically, people write off Mississippi. I'm like, Mississippi has the largest number of black people in any state.
I don't know why people keep writing off Mississippi.
Get it. Not the largest number, but the largest percent.
I don't get it.
I
think SB could have been more competitive. I really think SB could have been more competitive.
Well, you know what? I think maybe if the DNC had sort of paid attention to him, then maybe that
would have happened.
I mean,
and, you know, so I am encouraged, you know, based on my conversations with them in the past, I am encouraged, even though he lost his Senate seat, I am encouraged by someone like a Jamie Harrison taking over the helm at DNC. Because I think Jamie, based on the conversations I've had, and we've had him on this show a long time before the pandemic, when he had just kind of was gearing up, and we were in South Carolina talking to him, and I got the sense he knows that, like he picks that. He was trying to do that in South Carolina. Obviously, I think it was just down to white voters in South Carolina. He needed some of those, and they were like, do I want 2 black U.S. senators representing my state?
I mean,
that's what it boils
I think
down to.
Even though Tim Scott's a Republican, I do think that was part of the calculus. I also think that, you know, the fundraising numbers didn't tell the full story.
Yeah.
You know, you got a lot of money from New York and California, Jamie, but the real effort, and you had a lot of DC consultants, right? And you're running ads in New York. But guess what? Who cares about the New Yorkers? The New Yorkers just give you money. You really needed to do a lot more grassroots, you know, making sure that the South Carolinians gave you $2 or $3, because we know that the literature shows if you give me $2 for my campaign, the probability that you will actually turn out and vote is exponentially increased. So if I'm a New Yorker and I give Jamie $2,000, well, I can't vote for him. If you're in South Carolina and you give him $2, you're most likely going to vote for him because you feel invested in the campaign.
That's right. That's
and
right.
I think that those small dollar amounts could have been greater.
I agree. It's a different day and age too. You know, it's no longer just like money determines like whether or not a person's going to win a race. It's a much more different, complex environment. Christina, unfortunately, I got to let you go. This is great. Christina Greer, also somewhat of a homegirl too, joining us here.
Mount Airy.
Philly girl, Mount Airy, joining us here on now. She's definitely doing the work at Fordham University, teaching political science, other issues, as politics editor for thegrio.com, and you can check her out regularly, almost daily on MSNBC. Joining us here now, she's gracing us with her presence on Reality Check WURD. Appreciate you, Christina. Thanks so much.
I appreciate you, Charles.
All right, take care. That's right.
All right, thanks for delivering Philly too. Philly did their job. I appreciate it.
That's what we do. All right. We're going to have you back more often. Thanks so much for staying in touch. All right. Okay. Take care. Peace. Bye. All right. Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break. Phone lines are open. We'll be right back.
Seniors, does your doctor regularly reach out to check on you? Can you walk into your doctor's office and see them if you need to? Do you have your doctor's cell phone number and can you call them anytime, day or night? At Dedicated Senior Medical Center, their only specialty is caring for seniors. Dedicated makes it easy to get the primary care you deserve. Doctors spend more time with patients than the doctors you may be used to. They offer telehealth visits, help you get your medications, and even make sure you get to your appointments. If your doctor isn't treating you like family, it's time to say yes to Dedicated Senior Medical Center. Call Dedicated Senior Medical Center today to schedule a visit and find out what you're missing. Call 267-443-1900. That's 267-443-1900. Appointments are available now.
This year's been tough.
but it's given me a lot of time to learn new skills through the internet.
I've been joining more classes during lockdown.
I'm doing an internship.
I taught myself how to play guitar.
So when people ask,
will I be able to learn online?
I feel like I'm ready.
Internet Essentials from Comcast has connected millions of families from low-income homes to the internet. So no matter what back to school looks like, students can be ready for anything. Learn more at comcast.com/Internet Essentials.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach with tips to help you stay well. We breathe every day and have been doing so since before we were born. But wait, let's think about this for a moment. Something as simple as breathing can enhance our health and well-being. When we breathe mindfully, we slow down, take deep breaths, and activate our parasympathetic system to relax our bodies. Mindful breathing goes like this. Number 1, find a comfortable place to sit still for a few minutes. Number 2, close your eyes and relax your hands on your thighs. Number 3, take a deep breath in and count to 3. Then exhale your breath and count to 3. Do this 5 times. We sometimes think mindful breathing has to be an intense experience, yet even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at WURDradio.com.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, phone lines are open. Let's get to them. Yusuf out of Oak Lane calling in for a reality check. Yusuf, what's good?
Yes, Mr. Ellison, I got to give it to you. You started off your program no longer than 5 minutes after you started your program. You went right into the environment with Cindy Bass. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. You know, you stay on this. You know, your meteorologist instincts let you know that, you know, the temperature isn't right. And so you get right into the environment and while the temperature is right. And my next point I want to make is, okay, it's been cold for a few days, but Saturday it's going up to 58, 59 degrees, and that's not normal. Okay? This is December. It's not supposed to be up to nearly 60 degrees in December. I'm saying, you know, we can think that things are going back to normal with this coronavirus and with this climate change. It keeps showing that it's not going back to normal. It'll tip down for a little while, then it go right back up, the temperature and the virus. And it's, we're not going to sit there and convince me that there's not a connection between the temperature and the virus. Thanks for bringing that Cindy Bass on talk about the environment. And you on time. Thanks.
All right, I appreciate you, Yusuf. I hope you heard us also. We were talking with Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson yesterday too. Environment. You know, the whole focus was top of the 10 o'clock hour was the environment. So we've had some strong eco-word content analysis, commentary, and just getting a sense of, we want, if like institutions like the Philadelphia City Council want to talk that talk, we are going to make sure we keep on talking about it to ensure that they walk the walk, and that there are no contradictions here. Like, if you really want to go green, you really want to go clean, you really want the air to be clean, the water to be clean, okay, well, let's start talking about that. Let's start talking about how we can live differently and in a much more prosperous manner in a place like Philadelphia. Filthy, nasty, dirty does not need to be the standard in Philadelphia. All right. And for too long, we've accepted that as the standard. That's not normal. That should never be normal. Personally, I think a clean Philly with clean air, where people aren't that people aren't getting sick from, that's the standard. That should be the Philly standard. And I'm done with the Philadelphia jokes, and I'm done with, oh, this is just the way it is here. No, like this, it's time for a new kind of standard and a new kind of living, a new way of being, and to stop people from getting sick and dying. Frankly, people have been dying in Philly from things that are just preventable. It's just, we have problems in Philly that are fixable. Let me go to Pat out of West Philly calling in for a reality check. Pat, Miss Pat, how you doing? Can you hear us?
Okay. Listen, I heard something, and I don't know how true this is, but I heard that the elected officials in the city of Philadelphia are offering citizens of Philadelphia to have input on the budget for next year. Had you heard anything about that?
Yeah, that's sort of the normal ongoing thing. I haven't heard of anything special with respect to that, but that's sort of the normal process where people need to, and I need to put that word out about signing up for public comment period, and then you have you definitely want to keep track of, go to phlcouncil.com, keep track of all the different hearings that are coming up. And so, city council, like different committees, are having hearings about different budgets. And so, and people can participate in those, through providing testimony, et cetera. I don't know if anything, maybe I'm missing something, anything special that's been announced. And that's my part. That's my fault on that. If I haven't heard that, I haven't kept track of that.
Yeah, because I was never aware that, we, as citizens of Philadelphia, I know we had an input, but I think it's being advertised as something special that you can actually have a say in how the budget is being divided up in the city of Philadelphia. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly or not. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about it, and that was the first time I had ever heard about it. So I was wondering if you had heard anything about it.
If I know what you can do, once again, a good resource is the phlcouncil.com, the website. So one place in particular, more specifically, phlcouncil.com/budget 2021. And if you go there, you can see the budget, the city's budget proposed for, and they had to modify because of pandemic for fiscal year 2021. So check that out, and there's going to be, it's a resource, they call it the City Council Budget Resource Center. Check that out. It's my fault for not, but I'm glad you raised that, Pat, and I did, and I want to thank another listener, Harry Lopez, that reached out to me on email, and we've been talking about this. We have the last City Council hearing before the break, the holiday break coming up this Thursday. You'll hear it on City Council Live, so just be prepared, everyone, for a fairly lengthened session. We may go overtime on that. But that break's going to give us some time here at City Council Live WURD to now think a bit more intentionally about how we deliver that information, make that information a lot more approachable and accessible to you, and make it easier to understand. And Harry, I want to thank you, Pat, for asking that question. And continue, people ask me questions about that to see if I know. If I don't know, thanks for putting me on the spot then, because I don't profess to know everything. I can't, right? And so I'm not up to speed on like every announcement that's made. I'd like to be, but every announcement that's made at City Hall or at City Council. But I really am thinking about how to, and it's, I have to do this in such a way that's very intentional and it's careful. It is, it is a bandwidth issue for the most part, because it's, so maybe I need interns. I don't know. So maybe I'm putting that open call out there for people that want to help with that. But I am trying to find a way to, once we get back into City Council in 2021, we figured out some kind of system whereby people understand what's going on in City Council. And hopefully City Council will start feeling that rhythm and process too. I think I'm getting a sense folks at City Council are hearing the need to make themselves a little bit more user-friendly. That's important. So that is something that I am working on, that we're working on here. And so you might start hearing some things. I've had some conversations with the programming director here at WURD too. And, so you might start hearing things like how, you had like the commercial break, you had like those, you have those vignettes, those little promos, about wellness. Well, you might start hearing some civic literacy things, kind of teaching people or giving them tips on, hey, this is how you follow these bills in a place like City Council, or even, we'll talk about it as far as Harrisburg. But I've been having multiple conversations with people who really feel like this is a problem that has to be addressed, and it can be fixed. We can do it with some literacy, some creative literacy, and have some fun while we're at it. Thanks for asking that question, Pat.
No
problem.
We'll
talk some more. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, bye-bye.
You do the same. Oh, thanks so much. I didn't realize you were still on the phone, Ms. Pat, so I apologize. I apologize, but thank you. Thanks for hanging on, and thanks for listening and calling in, and the work that you were doing too. I know you were doing that work on the census, which we talked about yesterday. So I appreciate that service. Thank you for that service, because that was real important. So, and hopefully they'll sort that out. Also, don't forget, you can go to wordradio.com/marketplace. That's our virtual marketplace where you can buy black during the holidays. And so we're still facilitating that here at WURD. That's part of the WURD mission. That's what we're all about, supporting black businesses, growing black economy. and expanding Black agency, and making our community stronger, figuring out ways to empower communities. We got a lot of work to do, but that's one place to start. WordRadio.com/marketplace or WordWorks.com/marketplace, full of local small Black businesses that are still trying to still chugging along, adapting to this pandemic environment, and are prepared to help you for your holiday gift buying, even during this pandemic. So definitely support them. Go to wordradio.com/marketplace or see what they can provide for you, because they got some great businesses out there selling some great products. All right, that wraps this Tuesday edition of Reality Check. It's been a busy one. Looking forward to talking with you all tomorrow, Wednesday, 10 a.m. sharp. We got The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders is coming up next. Let me wind down and cut out and let her go ahead and take the mic. So continue to stay tuned in. I want to thank Troy Wilmore as well at the Board of Steel, Philly, and everyone else beyond. Please stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, please stay safe out there. All right, you all have a great afternoon, a good evening, and God willing, I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp. Take care.